Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів. Робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить. Хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар? Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ. Тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар. Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Байрактар.
Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, everybody. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 240 of the news. And guess what? The anthem played.
And the anthem did play. Of course, we were actually supposed to have a brand new intro card tonight with a brand new song, but due to, I guess you could say, a mental lapse, I forgot to change it out before stream. A little bit of a technical glitch on our end. Sorry about that, everyone, but we were going to see if we could switch out the Ukrainian anthem for another Ukrainian song. Sadly, that didn't happen, but still, welcome to tonight's news. The past 24 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine here on day 240, and the beginning of a brand new week of the war in Ukraine. And of course, a lot has happened today. We've heard an official declaration once again by the Ukrainian government that the Ukrainian armed forces are preparing for another massive push, this time to take Kherson itself. This is huge news, of course, we've heard this before, but this time seems a little bit more serious than before. In fact, I think that this time they will actually succeed in trying to make it all the way to Kherson if they have the ammunition and also, I guess you could say, an in-depth and also accurate plan based off of what they will most likely be facing in that area. And so, without further ado, let's move into the Black Sea real quick, because I believe that our title should have actually been something a little bit more pressing, and I guess you could say a little bit more tense. In fact, I believe that we will change that title right now, because just a few hours before this stream, a Russian Su-27 fired at a British Royal Air Force aircraft flying over the Black Sea. And so we're going to be changing our title here for a second. Let's see, Russia fires at British plane. There we go. Click save. So, I would have to say that this is probably a little bit more pressing than the preparation for a counteroffensive. Of course, we will cover and make sure that that is the priority news once the counteroffensive begins. But considering that the Russians have actually fired a shot, a missile, an air-to-air missile at a RAF aircraft, is about the closest that the West has ever come under direct fire before during this entire war. And so we're going to be going to this article. I could not find any video or picture evidence of this, but considering that this was actually spoken about in the House of Commons today, I do consider this to be entirely true. Otherwise, the House of Commons wouldn't be addressing this matter. We will be using The Guardian, so credit to The Guardian for providing this article, to cover this news and explain what this kind of means. A Russian fighter jet released a missile in the vicinity of a British aircraft in international airspace over the Black Sea because of a technical malfunction, the UK Defense Secretary Ben Wallace has revealed. "We are incredibly lucky that the episode did not become worse," said Wallace. He also accused Russia of sometimes acting reckless by flying as close as 15 feet or 4.6 meters to NATO aircraft. The episode on 29th of September has promoted Wallace to ensure that routine UK surveillance flights over the Black Sea in place since 2019 were now escorted by armed aircraft. So not going through the entire article and reading off the whole thing, but this is a bit of a... This is showing that the British are trying to downplay the situation, but this right here is about the closest to war one ever gets. Releasing a missile in the vicinity of a British aircraft is not really what happened according to what I've heard. Apparently, what actually happened is that this Russian aircraft fired off an air-to-air missile within the vicinity of this British aircraft, and the missile missed somehow. We don't know the exact reasoning or the exact story of what happened in between the RAF aircraft and the Su-27, but one thing we do know is that a missile flew somewhere in close proximity to the RAF plane, just feet away most likely, and just narrowly avoiding hitting and destroying the surveillance aircraft. And so going off of that, we can see one of two things. First, the British are trying to downplay the situation so as to not begin World War III a little bit too hastily. The other thing that we're seeing is that what I'm believing is most likely true. If this was just a simple accident by a Russian aircraft, why would the defense minister be saying that they are now going to be escorting these surveillance aircraft with armed escorts? That goes to show that while they're saying one thing, an entirely different thing did happen, and a Russian aircraft almost shot down an RAF or otherwise a NATO plane. This is serious news, And of course, we'll be covering it if it does escalate, but I believe that now that the Russians have laid out the precedent that they will fire an air-to-air missile at NATO aircraft over the Black Sea and international airspace, then things will start to become incredibly heated in the Black Sea, specifically in between the NATO forces, because it can either be the British, the Americans, or anyone else who's involved in, I guess you could say, routine surveillance operations into Ukraine, or it could get a lot worse. I'm not seeing that things will be going all too well in the future. I would have to say that this is about the closest that the West and Russia have been to getting to war. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this very pressing news, and I would have to say this is incredibly concerning to really everyone around the world. If that missile had hit that RAF plane and shot it down, that would have invoked Article 5 immediately. And to think that a missile flew that close to an RAF aircraft from a Russian plane means that we should probably look into, since it seems that an air battle in the Black Sea will almost be inevitable at this point, maybe we should start looking into making a very hardline stance about protecting aircraft, like we already see them escorting them with armed aircraft. Maybe we should go a little bit further and see about saying that there will be a no-fly zone over a certain area of the Black Sea near the Romanian coast, and then moving from there. These kinds of things should not go unpunished by the West. To think that this Russian pilot most likely got orders to fire at that RAF plane, that also adds a whole extra layer to it. Of course, that's entirely speculation. We don't know if they got that order, but still, the fact that a missile flew that close says enough. With that, we're now going to be moving into the news of the preparation of the Kherson counterattacks, and also the video footage that we've gotten today. A decent amount of it is of Ukrainian armed forces, but of course, we made sure that none of these videos had any kind of identifying landmarks, so we didn't give away their locations. Starting off in the town of Svatove, we can see that the Russians have taken it all. Literally, they've taken the fixtures, the taps, the toilets, everything. Here's a Ukrainian soldier wandering around a liberated house and showing you how thorough the Russians are in stealing everything they can. The radiator gone. We don't even have radiators in the south, but that just looks odd to see these two radiator pipes sticking out of the wall and the radiator is just gone.
Батареи, бляха-муха, снимают и пиздец. Батареи и прочую херню. А ну дай мне. Приду. А ну, малыш, ребенок. Батареи сняты, бляха-муха.
We now see him going downstairs. Very interesting wallpaper.
Люди себе жили, бляха, тут поснимали батареи. Так це ще ж не все.
They left the subwoofer.
О, не та комната. Вон, де це? Сантехніка. Де? Нема нічого, бляха-муха. Все зняли. І не ще й душ открутили, блін. А, да. Та ти що? А на що? Гандони йобані, блядь. Штопані, блядь. Ще не на рибок попиздили, блін, з акваріума.
And with that, that's the end of the video. But you can see that the Russians go through every single house. And now they're not just going for the washing machines. They're going for the radiators and the taps as well. They are getting desperate for any kind of loot to sell. Also, real quick, I did see something I wanted to address. It looks like Matthew took out the bot, but
That was definitely a bot. Because if you attack a NATO aircraft, that will invoke Article 5.
I've got to say, I think that one actually, because to think that people, and this is always funny to me, I'm actually pretty certain that that wasn't a bot, that was a person. And it wasn't just someone from a bot, well, some kind of machine from a bot farm saying that. But let's go real quick to the NATO Charter, and let's go read Article 5 real quick. So that way we can clear up the waters, because I don't talk out of my rear end all the time. Sometimes, maybe, and I try and correct them when I can. But on Article 5, it's pretty obvious what it says. So let's go back real quick to the RAF airplane nearly being shot down, and let's read what Article 5 says. The parties agree that an armed attack against one or more of them in Europe or North America shall be considered an attack against them all, and consequently they agree that, in such an armed attack occurs, each of them, in exercise of the right of individuals or collective self-defense recognized by Article 51 of the Charter of the United Nations, will assist the party or parties so attacked by taking forthwith, individually and in concert with the other parties, such action as it deems necessary, including the use of armed force, to restore and maintain the security of the North Atlantic area. Any such armed attacks and all measures taken as a result thereof shall immediately be reported to the Security Council. Such measures shall be determined when the Security Council has taken the measures necessary to restore and maintain international peace and security. In short, if any kind of asset, if anything owned by a country in NATO is attacked, it will be considered an invocation of Article 5. If we move down to Article 6, it also clearly shows, for the purposes of Article 5, an armed attack on one or more of the parties is deemed to include an armed attack, skipping to the second subparagraph, on the forces, vessels, or aircraft of any of the parties when in or over these territories or any other area in Europe in which occupation forces of any of the parties were stationed on the date when the treaty entered into force, or the Mediterranean Sea, or the North Atlantic area north of the Tropic of Cancer. It clearly says aircraft right there. If that RAF plane had been shot down due to the premises laid out in Article 6, that would have invoked Article 5. So I had to make sure to go back and clarify that one, because I love it's entertaining in a way, and it's also something worth addressing when someone comes through and they say something so wrong, but they're so hard said. That guy told me to get a grip. You can't make that kind of stuff up. Like, it clearly says it in writing here. This is on the NATO website, an exact copy of the NATO Charter in English. And it says it right there. So with that, we're going to be moving on into the next clip of news. Of course, it's interesting to see that the Russians are stealing everything, but it's good to know that the Ukrainians are stealing their tanks, as we'll see in the next clip, as the Ukrainians were taking away a captured Russian vehicle. We can see the BTR right there, moving on down the road, and it looks like they've loaded up that captured BTR already. They have
I love it. I love it
full.
when they load on top of the tank or whatever the armored carrier is. That's pretty cool looking.
Oh yeah, it looks incredibly cool, and I gotta say, it's nice to see that the Ukrainians are starting to put their armed forces pretty much immediately onto these captured vehicles and use them right away. Of course, hopefully they wash off the the V marking on the side and replace it with a cross. But of course, it's great to see that Ukrainian armed forces are continuing on in that area like they've always been, and hopefully they'll be pushing back the Russians soon. Moving on into the next bit of news from the northern area, we've seen, of course, while I like to report that things go incredibly well for the Ukrainians all the time, we have seen one video this time that has shown that some Ukrainian forces have been hit by kamikaze drones in the area, and so, of course, we try and make our best efforts while we are pro-Ukrainian to be unbiased in our reporting, and so I'm going to show this one because it is important to show that Ukrainian soldiers do take casualties and the kind of rigors and difficulties that they go through to help and fight back for this land. It's not a cakewalk for the Ukrainians all the time. This is being fought and won back by blood, sweat, and tears, and in this video we can see that the Ukrainians do take fire, do get hit sometimes, but by and large, the entire Ukrainian army continues to roll forward and crush the Russians when the time is right. And so here's the video. First, we can see what appears to be a Mista B that the Ukrainians are using. And we can see the kamikaze drone flying in, and it hits right behind the battery, right on the crew, unfortunately. And this next clip, we can see another kamikaze drone hitting a Ukrainian supply truck that's inside of a dugout. And now we can see that supply truck burning. In another video, we can see what appears to be an anti-artillery radar of a sort that is now being hit by the kamikaze drone. That one most likely incurred no casualties because the drone hit the boom on top of the vehicle. So well, then again, that's a little bit of a stretch. Shrapnel could easily have gone into the command, I guess you could say, module of the vehicle, but it did hit the boom instead. We now see another clip of some other form of radar being hit by one of these suicide drones. We can see it flying in right there and hitting the installation, most likely knocking it out. These kinds of radar booms in vehicles are paper thin. They may as well just be your normal. In terms of armor thickness, they are practically the same thickness as an 18-wheeler, or as y'all would call it in the United Kingdom or Europe, a semi-truck's trailer. And so if it gets hit directly, it will knock it out. We now see another clip of a Ukrainian main battle tank firing into the distance, and it looks like the suicide drone is going to try and hit it. Getting a good look at it, it looks like a T-64BV. And we see the suicide drone hit to the rear, but it looks like the tank suffered superficial damage as we don't see any gray or black smoke coming off of it, showing that the engine bay was critically damaged or destroyed, or if there was any kind of penetration of the crew compartment that led to some sort of overpressure. So it looks like the tank may have been okay, but in this last clip we saw that another suicide drone hit a Ukrainian car, knocking it out. Now, I don't really show a lot of these videos often, of course, because we have Ukrainian viewers on this channel, and I don't want to show them things like this all the time, but one thing I was thinking when I saw this one today, and of course included in tonight's news, is that it's important to remember that the war isn't always, and of course we try to make sure that it's almost like this all the time on this channel, it isn't always just good laughs and the Ukrainians just blistering the Russians while taking no losses in return. Every war will take lives on both sides. And in this video here, we can see that some Ukrainian soldiers have paid the ultimate price in defending their land, and I think that's something important to keep in context and important to show, because it makes the Ukrainians not look like an undefeatable, untouchable force. They still do take casualties, and it's the bravery of these soldiers who face death like this every single day that make the independence and the sovereignty of Ukraine a reality, and the peace and security in Eastern Europe a more assured certainty. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from that clip, and we're now going to be moving further down the line to reach some much better news near Oleksandrivka, where we saw today that the Ukrainians have asked more mines, sir, as they load up more anti-tank mines into a truck, and then they drive it dangerously. And so here's the video. Also, we have to mute that.
Oh.
So we can see them screwing in the pressure plates onto these mines. We can now see them loading the anti-tank mines into the back of this pickup truck. And now they're driving it like they stole it, which is kind of scary, but I guess these things require a decent amount of weight, or they haven't been completely armed yet, and so they don't explode. I'll have to try and get an answer from that from the live chat from someone who knows why these mines aren't exactly exploding, but it's wild to see them with the mines in the back of the truck driving it that crazily, just sloshing them around in the back. We can now see them unloading the mines, and now they're going to be placing them in a nice choice spot. Of course, it doesn't even matter if they're well camouflaged like in this field. We have seen the Russians run over them when they're clearly visible. And S. Winiger said, those aren't armed yet, and I thank you so much for letting me know that. I think, for some reason, I thought that when you screwed in those pressure plates, they were pretty much armed at that point. So it's good to know that that's not the case. But I'm wondering if you could clarify for me, Vinegar, how are they armed? Because I would like to know, is it just screwing in the pressure plate? Is there a certain kind of thing that you have to do with the pressure plate to then make it armed? I would like to know that. I would be interested. And so that's the end of the video. But it's nice to see that the Ukrainian armed forces are making sure to pick up their litter and then drop it in other places so the Russians can run over it. And so with that, we are going to be moving on into the next clip of news from the Kherson area, where we see that the 59th Brigade was destroying some Russians in the Kherson area. And so, here's a video of some Russians getting blitzed by the 59th. We can see the drone looking into the tree line, and we can see one go up in a literal puff of smoke right there.
I see everybody saying something about the pin.
You just pull the pin out. I'm guessing like a grenade. Now, one thing, while we watch the 59th Brigade obliterate the Russians, one thing that I'm going to try and curtail, looking at some criticism that I've seen, is that I've seen a decent amount of people ask that I not rewind videos and pause them in the middle of them, and so I'm going to try and curtail that as best I can, so that's the reason why I didn't rewind that one. We're going to try and keep the news rolling in as dynamic of a form as possible. But with that, that's the end of the video, and you could see in that clip that the 59th Brigade did take out a decent bit of Russian vehicles. It looks like a couple of Russian main battle tanks, and maybe a couple of Russian artillery pieces as well. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next clip of location, well, not location unknown, location Kherson news, and further down the line, where we saw a very unsuccessful Russian push. And when I say push, I mean, it was incredibly unsuccessful. Y'all will see why. Here's the video. Also, real quick, I don't know when the date of this was. It says an unsuccessful push in between Mykolaiv and Kryvyi Rih, but the problem with that is that going off of that, Mykolaiv is over here, and Kryvyi Rih is all the way up here. This could be anywhere on the Kherson front line, so the marker is completely inaccurate, and I also don't know when this would have happened, because for example, we can see that the trees are green, so we know that it's not early in the war. It must have been midsummer or even right now during the later fall, because I haven't seen the trees lose their leaves yet in most videos. But still, we don't know exactly what time this video was filmed, and we don't know exactly where in the Kherson front line it was it happened at. But here's the video of these Russians failing at an assault. Regardless, we have not seen this video before, and so we're showing it tonight. We see some artillery land. Oh, wait a minute. This did happen a while ago. This happened like a week ago in the same area, and it was a lot shorter of a video. It only showed the next 20 seconds, and so we're about to see the whole thing unadulterated for the first time, all 2 minutes and 50 seconds of it. So now with that in mind, let's watch the video. Of course, when you see him once again firing over the heads of his friends, so if they pop up, they're dead. We can, of course, see them trying to recover from the artillery round that exploded near them. We can see this guy's having a little bit of a tough time. And I see him firing the machine gun again. We'll say that Russian is now limping off. This guy is just firing in every direction as the other Russian limps across the street. Now, this is the part where the last video got cut off. We didn't see beyond this. And so, of course, I know that this is about a week old, and I've seen a million people saying that, but we have not seen the entire unedited version of this clip. And so we're going to be showing it now because, of course, it's new footage. And while it didn't happen today, it is showing a pretty good idea of the situation a week ago when the Ukrainians pushed towards Svatove. You can see them continuing to move along. The Russian is still limping, and also it looks like his butt plate has fallen off, and it's just dangling to his left side. They're continuing to run as the Russians are firing in literally every direction, so I'm believing that they may be almost encircled at this point. You now see this guy fall to the ground. Now see another Russian appearing to limp. When you see this guy now slamming his head into the ground and getting it back up.
Ворон, прикрой! Я 300!
We now hear another shell fly over. We heard it explode in the distance, but we didn't see it on film. When you see more Russians running away from where they were getting fired at, and with that, that's the end of the video. And it's interesting to finally get the last minute and 30 seconds of this clip. We only saw the beginning part last time, and it's interesting to see that it appears that at that point, the Russian infantry were retreating across the field while under artillery fire and also rifle fire as well. So Ukrainian infantry were close nearby. They were shooting at them. The Ukrainians were shooting at the Russians, and the Russians were trying to retreat across the field the best they could, even crip walking along the way like we saw that one guy. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on from this clip, of course, about a week old, but still brand new in terms of footage. And we're now going to be moving up north into an unknown area behind the lines, but we saw a Ukrainian tank moving incredibly fast. And of course, it's pretty neat to see. And also, what kind of vehicle is this right here that they're inside of? When you see the Ukrainian tank rounding the corner, and they are putting that thing through the rigors. Does it have a horn?
It sounded like it.
Oh, wait a minute, no, I think it was a car.
That was a truck.
Yeah,
it was a truck.
It was a truck or the car, but... Oh, look, wait a minute! That's a capture vehicle. That's a T-80U. And in case y'all don't know, the Ukrainians had such a small number of T-80Us going into this war in their original stockpile that, by and large, if you see a T-80U, it was most likely captured at one point or another. In fact, I don't even think... Let me check that real quick. Do the Ukrainians have T-80Us? Let's see here. So we'll go to the tank encyclopedia real quick. Going down.
I didn't even know this existed. The tank encyclopedia.
Yeah.
How long has this been around?
It's been around for quite a while. And of course, I'm trying to see how people enjoy this tonight. We're trying out as many new things as possible, so I'm trying to not rewind clips. I've seen a lot of y'all say, just rewind them.
But Enforcer, look at that poll, though.
Yeah, and it's unanimous. A lot of people like me rewinding and pausing clips. I'm glad to know it's just a small amount of people who complain, but they're incredibly loud. So, honestly, Matthew, to get into a rabbit hole real quick, since people apparently enjoy them, it's interesting to see how a very small group of people who just talk incredibly loud can really make you think that everyone thinks that way. Because based off of that poll, almost no one thinks that way. Everyone likes the videos paused and rewinded and commentary added, while most people, in just a small amount, don't. So that's pretty interesting.
That's true.
To see.
That's true. So it's better to stay original because that's what the folks like.
And that's true. That's true. So moving on down, let's check out the design of the T-80A. We don't want to know about that. We want to know about the T-80U right here. Was designed by SBK. Let's see. It uses Contact 5, of course, has an improvised gun sight, and the 9K119 reflects ATGMs from 1990. Let's see here. We want to move on down. Who owns? Also, look at that T-80U. That is horrid. That's a horrid paint job right there. Like, jeez.
Oh, I would love to say something right now, but I'm not sure if it's appropriate to say. It's a little too not PG for the channel.
Well, say it, but try and keep it as PG as possible.
No way I can say that.
All right. I'll hear it after stream. So let's see. I can't see anything about this being used by the Ukrainians at all. Okay, so real quick, everyone, let's say Tank Encyclopedia isn't going to do it. We're going to go to Wikipedia because, Wikipedia is a reliable source of information. And I want to, real quick, to address this because I think this is a good point. Wikipedia uses a lot of sources. These are their sources. And some of them are, of course, academic. Some of them are just normal articles made by news organizations. But there are sources to what's being said in a Wikipedia article most of the time. It's not just BS the entire time you're reading one. So let's go down to the T-80U. I can't see... Let's see. 345 T-80UDs were in service in 1995 and 271 in 2005. And then during the Russian invasion of 2022, many T-80 models of differing varieties have been captured by the Ukrainian armed forces. The exact number of captured tanks is unknown. And a T-80UD looks like what? Like, I've never heard of a T-80UD until right now. I thought there was just a T-80U. Also, the Republic of Korea uses a T-80U. What? That's South Korea. They have T-80Us.
Wait, really?
Yeah, that's insane. Dude, does North Korea?
That is crazy.
North Korean. Hang on, everyone.
Oh, North Korea. They have the junkiest tanks, I'm sure.
T-80. Tanks of North Korea. Let's go to tanks of North Korea, and let's see what they have, because if they don't have a T-80... Wow, are you kidding me? The Russians threw the North Koreans under the bus and sold T-80Us to the South Koreans, but they didn't sell T-80Us to North Korea. Wow. That is sad. when your own like father country that pretty much made you their puppet doesn't even give you the more modern tanks at that point in history. That is sad. But anyways, we're going to be moving on from that, and we're going to be getting back to what we were talking about here. This is most likely a captured Russian tank that's now being used by the Ukrainians. And so we're now going to let the video wrap out. And so with that, that's the end of the video. And of course, while we watch the last 3 seconds there, it is great to know that the South Koreans use T-80Us, which is hilarious actually, and also to see that the Ukrainians have captured some of their own and are using them on the front lines. It lets us know that the Ukrainian armed forces are getting a little bit of a quick picker-upper by the captures of Russian armored vehicles. And finally, moving into Kherson, we have seen that air defenses from the Russian armed forces were activated in Kherson overnight as the Russians tried to shoot down incoming MLRS rockets from the Hi, Mars. Here's some explosions in the distance. Ooh, that was a little close. And what's interesting is that the Russians have fired off so many air defenses trying to shoot down these MLRSs, and we've never seen them succeed hardly at all. I believe they may have intercepted one on video, but out of that one, there's been about 40 or 50 that have hit their target.
And Enforcer, just real quick, a big shout out to the whole Packrat family for being here tonight. I see Mrs. Packrat is also in the chat. I just wanted to call that out. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. The whole Packrat family is here. And of course, welcome to the Packrat family. Packrat has been a old guard member of the Lee Spring Army for as long as I can remember. And so it's honestly nuts, everyone, to see that the whole Packrat gang is here. And so everyone give a huge LSA and a welcome to the entire Packrat family. But with that, we're going to let this video continue. We hear explosions continuing in the distance. And it looks like one of the HIMARS missiles hit their target. We see the cameraman still looking around for action, but the action is now ended, as most of the MLRSs have most likely, well, the MLRS rockets or missiles have most likely hit their target, and the Russian air defenses have most likely been made inactive at that point. And so with that, that's the end of the video. But to discuss the situation in the Kherson area, it is appearing to be quite bleak for the Russians. The Ukrainians, of course, have claimed that they're preparing for another offensive. They have done this before, and then it turned out to be a bit of a feint, but this time I believe they are indeed quite serious with this one. They've already shown that through minimal efforts, they could take a massive swath of the northeastern part of the Kherson finger, and so with that in mind, a large concerted effort against Russia's largest force in all of Ukraine, which is on the other side of the Dnipro River, appears that it could have a decent amount of success. We won't explain on this channel how exactly we think the Ukrainians will push forward, what roads they would take, what towns they would most likely liberate first, but I can say that I have high hopes for the Ukrainians, and I think they will get as close to Kherson or take it as ever before. Moving on out of the Kherson area and over into Odessa, we did see that the Ukrainians successfully shot down a Shahed drone in the early hours of the morning. And so let's watch this video as the Ukrainians saved some of their citizens from an unfortunate fate. We can see a Stinger fire off the shed. It didn't get shot down there, but as it continues to fly and that little putt-putt motor keeps running, you can see it disappear into the distance where, after the video, it apparently was shot down. We could not confirm that on video, but it is good to know that the Ukrainian ground forces are trying to stop these Shaheds from reaching their targets as best as possible. And based off of that amount of ground fire, if we listen here, I think it will probably get shot down at some point off video. Sadly, we didn't get to see it, though, because it went behind the tree line. But with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next clip of news out of the Odessa area and in to Russia, where we've had some other big news happen today. Some very big news. Would you believe it, Matthew? But Putin has finally made an appearance outside of his bunker in the Kremlin.
You're kidding. He's crawled out of his hole. You're joking.
I'm not kidding. I am 100% telling you the truth. But before we cover that news, let's cover our polls. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
Wow, and that was pretty smooth transition. I wasn't expecting that. But anyways, this time we have 3 polls to address due to popular demand. And the first question was, do you think it was a malfunction that the Russian missile flew in proximity to the RAF plane? It looks like 64% said no, it was not an accident. 23% said I don't know. And 13% said yes, it probably was. Now for me, I don't think it was an accident. Whenever a missile flies close to a plane, that's usually no accident. But that's just my take on it. There's a little bit of speculation involved in that. But Enforcer, what do you think again?
So to explain something real quick, because and I got to say this because it's always interesting to me, and I know that I take this. You know what? We're not even going to address that. I'm going to just run the show and say the information I know and take it with a grain of salt. I may be missing a thing or two, but let me show y'all an SU-27 with a. Well, you know what? I'm just going to pull up a picture of an SU-27. I think it will pull up a picture of one with missiles. So,
that livery is so cool. I love it.
It's a sick one. I mean, like, the Ukrainians have the best camouflage for their aircraft out there. But let's see if I can find a Russian SU-27 loaded up with missiles. A good picture of it. Here's one right here. That is an SU-27 with R-27 missiles equipped onto its pylons. Now, if it was carrying these missiles... Well, actually, that's not a Russian Su-27. That is still a Ukrainian Su-27. Anyways, we can see a Ukrainian Su-27 carrying R-27 missiles, which is, I guess you could say, the Russian equivalent to the AIM-7 that the United States uses, or I guess you could say in more modern terms, I believe we use something else rather than the AIM-7 now for the most part. It's like the AIM-120. But anyways, moving on from that, this is their version of a BVR missile. This thing is attached to a pylon. There's only 2 ways for it to come off the pylon. One, the pilot has to click an eject button, where it ejects whatever is being carried on the pylon, which means that the missile just falls off the jet, or they fire it like you're seeing in this picture here. It can only be those 2 things. Those are the only ways a missile can come off of a jet in flight. There's no such thing, unless the maintenance of one is so poor, that without ejecting the missile, or forcefully ejecting it, that it just falls off. You can do that in a high-G turn, but considering that they were following, from the story, a Russian surveillance aircraft most likely going 500 miles per hour, I would not think that they would be pulling enough Gs following a plane flying in a straight line to pull one off of a pylon, and close enough to an RAF plane that it notes a serious concern and it gets addressed in the House of Commons. So that right there tells me that that's not true. What happened was that this Su-27, a Russian Su-27, fired off an air-to-air missile from a pylon, just like you see in the picture, and it flew past the RAF plane. Either the RAF plane evaded the missile and fired off enough countermeasures, and the missile was fired at such a far range that it was able to be evaded, or it was fired at such a close range, but the pilot made sure that, I guess you could say, the missile was aimed at such an angle it could not turn in hard enough, although that's highly unlikely with a modern missile, that it would not hit. Because one thing that people have to remember is that this isn't Vietnam anymore, when AIM-9Bs were just being introduced into service and a missile could miss easily. Modern missiles can pull a high amount of Gs, and if you've ever seen videos of air engagements in Iraq where air-to-air missiles were used, you can see that those things, even the BVR missiles like an AIM-7 or an AIM-120, they can pull a lot of Gs at this point. They can almost make a 180 turn if they want to. And so, going off of that, this jet would have had to have fired this missile, most likely a BVR missile, from outside of, I guess you could say, beyond visual range, and that RAF plane most likely fired off countermeasures and cranked to try and evade the missile, and then it's successfully evaded. That's the story I'm going with. Of course, this is all just speculation, so take it with a grain of salt. Of course, that's everyone's favorite dish on this channel. But I think that was a deliberate act by the Russians to try and shoot down an RAF surveillance plane in international waters, which would have invoked Article 5 of the NATO Charter due to the premises laid out in Article 6. I would go, and I would make a thorough case every single time I explain that, but I feel like that should be kind of common knowledge at this point. And I know that that's a pointless statement to make, but whenever, like not enough cowbell. Like, a comment like that, it always makes you feel like you gotta go through the maximum amount of effort to try and just lay out what I am saying is correct and it's based in fact. But anyways, with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well, because I would have to fall within the majority saying it was a deliberate act. And so with that, we are on to the next poll.
All right, and the next poll says, do you think that Russia is starting to play wild and loose with hostile encounters with NATO? It looks like 68% said yes, Russia is playing risky. 15% said possibly, but I'm not really sure. And also 17% say no, Russia is acting the same. Now, to me, I think Russia is starting to act a little bit more riskier than usual, and I think that's indicative of how badly they're doing in Ukraine. Like, for example, striking the German embassy, and more recently, the missile incident with that plane. I think those are signs that Russia is starting to get a little haywire, especially when dealing with NATO, which is the most pressing concern for the rest of the world. Obviously, Ukraine's having to fight the good fight, and they're doing a really good job of it. But Enforcer, what say you, as the old saying goes?
I would have to say that the Russians are definitely starting to get a little bit more openly hostile, considering that a missile was fired at an RAF plane today. That is quite serious. Also, the other thing that I have to say to back up my statement that that was a deliberate act by the Russians, if that was nothing more than a mere accident and it could be diplomatically smoothed over in between the British and the Russians, why are surveillance aircraft now going to be provided with armed fighter escorts as they go on their missions over the Black Sea? That is what makes me think that that was definitely a hostile encounter with the Russian Air Force that has now led the West to escalate behind the scenes, but try and play it down to the public so that way pandemonium and fear doesn't ensue. And of course, we're not one on this channel for invoking that either, but I do believe that that situation was pretty much, well, the orders were handed down from the Russian high command for that aircraft to fire on the RAF surveillance plane. I feel like that's almost a certainty at this point. So, with that in mind, I would have to agree with the large majority of y'all that they are starting to get a little bit more brazen, and I think in response to that, it's a good thing that the British will now be providing their surveillance aircraft with armed escorts, such as Eurofighter Typhoons most likely, and hopefully the United States will come in turn using their best aircraft at their disposal, either the F-22 or the F-35, because if anything will send a message to the Russians, it will be the best of America's fighter aircraft over there, flying over the Black Sea or over NATO territory. Also, real quick, an interesting side note, F-22 Raptor. According to public numbers, there are, let me try and find the public numbers here. There are 195 F-22 Raptors in U.S. service. These things stopped production in 2011, and the Air Force is already looking at replacing them because they were incredibly expensive to both build and maintain. They figured out that it's a little too expensive, as a matter of fact, and it now seems that they're going back towards the F-15, and they're trying to develop the F-15 a little bit more and make it last longer for that reason, based off of what I've heard. But still, the F-22 is one of the finest aircraft, and also, if you take a look at the number that have been produced, and there's 187 of these aircraft operational, and we look at the Russian Air Force, which let's take a real quick look at it, and let's scroll all the way down to the bottom. So let's scroll down, let's scroll down, let's scroll down. Oh, wait a minute, hang on. It looks like we're passing the spreadsheet right here. So we see that they have some Su-27s. They have 22 Su-27s at the moment, which is one of their best aircraft in service. They have 20 Su-30s. They have 120 Su-30 SMs. So pretty much in total, I guess you could say, in terms of modern, competent fighter aircraft, although the Su-35 is one of them. Let's go through, wait, hang on, let me go through a rabbit hole real quick, everyone, and let me add these together, and let's compare this to the amount of F-22s the U.S. has available at any given moment. So we see that they have 103 Su-35s, so 103 of those. They have 120 Su-30s. They have 100, wait a minute, hang on, they have 20 of the Su-30M2s, so very small amount. They have 22 Su-27s. They have some MiG-35s, which I don't know if you can really count those as competent or not. We'll add them into the figure, though. They have 8 of them, so that's not really a big number. And they also have some MiG-29s, which we already know what happened to the MiG-29s in Iraq during the Gulf War, so I wouldn't even count those as competent or qualifying aircraft. So in total, the Russians have in terms of usable combat aircraft. They have 273 fighters that could at least stand some kind of a small chance against the F-22. The problem, though, and this is just a basic fact, the F-22 is stealth. And so a Russian radar would not be able to pick that thing up on its radar to be able to shoot a BVR missile, which is the way most aircraft fight in the modern world, at the F-22 to shoot it down. These aircraft would have to get into a dogfight with the F-22, most likely in visual range, which means that the F-22 will have the obvious advantage. This thing, if you go and watch this at an air show, tell me that that thing is not unholy. It doesn't even seem like it's within the laws of physics with how an F-22 can maneuver at high speeds and low speeds in any kind of environment. It's incredible. It's an incredible aircraft. It's an incredible machine. And to see that the United States has 187 of these, the Russians could throw 273 aircraft at this F-22, and they don't even have those anymore. It's most likely half of that. And the F-22 could definitely shoot down all of them, especially with those kinds of numbers. You wouldn't even have to use the rest of the U.S. Air Force to get to the rest of them. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly quickly, because I think that while the Russians are getting hostile, still, just on the surface, just doing some quick number crunching and looking at the basic overview of everything, the Russian Air Force could not stand a chance against just the F-22s of the U.S. Air Force. And I'm sure that they wouldn't be able to stand a chance against the Eurofighter Typhoons of the United Kingdom, the Rafales of France, or the Mirage 2000s even. I just don't think they would be able to stand the test if it did come to blows in the Black Sea. And so with that, I hope I addressed that poll fairly well as well. And do we have another one, Matthew?
So we do have one more, and it was the one I mentioned earlier, and the question is, do you like the Enforcer rewinding the videos for analysis? Now, it looks like 85% said yes, it's fine, I like it, and 15% said no, I prefer no rewinding of the vids.
And I thank you all so much for enjoying that. Of course, that's been something that I've seen so much in my comments section, because of course I go through and read comments, because I want to. I don't heart them all, and I don't reply to a lot of people anymore, but I guarantee you all that I am reading your comments when you put them down. And a lot of people say, I love your channel, but one thing I wish you would stop doing is rewinding the videos and pausing them in the middle of them playing. It's driving me crazy. And I was thinking, man, I was like, I would hate to think that I'm driving people crazy. I'll try and stop doing that. But it seems like 85% of y'all think different. And so apparently, the people who cannot stand that are an incredibly small minority of people, and a lot of people enjoy that kind of commentary. And so we will make it our mission to continue to provide that kind of commentary as time goes by. And of course, thank you all so much once again for enjoying our channel and our show. That kind of solidifies to me in a way that we're not really going to listen to like complaints and I guess you say critiques like that anymore, because we do run our show a certain way, and it seems like a lot of people really do enjoy it being run that certain way. But we'll see. We'll test things out here and there and see if we can improve it in one way or another. But with that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well. And do we have another, Matthew?
All right, so that is our last poll for the first segment. So moving on to our first super chat, we have a $35 donation from Praise Adonai, who says, Enforcer and Matt, if you guys can find a licensable music track of the anthem, I will pay for it and give your channel the copyright license. I will make the video for the channel intro. Yeah! And Slava Ukraine.
Oh, well, thank you so much for the support, Praise Adonai. That was very kind of you. And I have been thinking, not we, because we've been quite busy today, both Matthew and me, but I have been thinking while I was trying to figure out what to do tonight, and then I completely flubbed it and still played that version of the Ukrainian anthem on accident. It was supposed to be something entirely new tonight, which was really cool. But we'll play it tomorrow, and we'll see. But one thing that I was thinking about doing, and this was a cool idea brought up to me by Iceland, one of our moderators, and he had gotten this from a viewer of our channel on Discord, is that we have the Lee Spring Army make the anthem. So if we have any talented musicians, we could try and come up with an anthem that sounds as good and as high energy as the one that we have had in the intro, and make it something exclusive to the Lee Spring Army. I think that's a great opportunity for a lot of our talent. We've seen loads of talented people watching the stream in all kinds of trades and crafts, and I'm sure we have a lot of musicians here, and I would love to see a Lee Spring Army homemade Ukrainian anthem, a really good sounding orchestral one that sounds just like the one we've been using so far. I think that would be cool. And I don't know about y'all, but we will see if that is possible in the future. If not, we are going to try and figure out some way to still have a Ukrainian anthem and also a very cool intro video like the one we've had. So with that, I thank you so much once again for the support and the offer praise, Adonai. We will probably, of course, I don't want to take advantage of your kindness. That was an incredibly kind thing. I thank you for the offer, but we will most likely try and not follow through on that because you've been incredibly kind to us so far, helping out this channel, and I couldn't really ask much more of you than the support you've given. And so with that, I thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And Enforcer, I've been seeing a ton of people saying the live chat, how about we do a cover of the anthem with the bagpipes and record it ourselves so nobody can copyright that? Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be cool, but I'd have to whip out the pipes. And I don't know if the pipes can be whipped out with where we're about to be heading. You know what I mean, Matthew? I mean, like, I don't think a lot of people would enjoy that, but we will see.
I say blast them.
Oh, we might blast them. I don't know.
Not really. I'm just playing.
We'll have to see. It's a pretty cool idea. And if I could pull it off, I don't think the bagpipe has low enough notes. I was just thinking that out in my head. But I think we could probably try and give it a shot. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And we are on to the next one.
All right. And up next, we have a super chat from, let's see here, Edward Curl, who says, I almost forgot to call out the amount. He put in a $22 donation, and thank you very much, Edward, for that. He says, several folks have said that NATO should send MTB-STO Ukraine. Most NATO MBTs 55 tons or more. Ukrainians bridges supports 45 tons, and T-Series recovery vehicle can recover 45 tons, plus no logistic support in place.
And he said MTB-STO?
Yes.
And how was that spelled? Just like one giant word, or?
Yeah, just one word. MTB-STO.
MTB-STO. Let's see. Vehicle? I'm finding some kind of a truck here. I don't know if that's what he's talking about. Is he talking about an MBT or an MTB?
So in the first sentence he says MTB-STO, and the second sentence he says MBTs.
Well, I thank you for the support. I'm not sure if you're talking about this truck or a main battle tank, but one thing I would say is that Western main battle tanks would probably provide Ukraine with a decent advantage in their country. Of course, it does come with a limitation of weight. A lot of Ukrainian bridges, from what we've been told, cannot support the full weight of an Abrams tank, so that's a little unfortunate. But on the same flip side, that is a perfect reason for whenever they retake land, it's time to rebuild the infrastructure, and what better place to start than the bridges? Just kidding, of course, that's impractical, but moving on from that, there could be ways that I believe it would be a bit of a limiting factor, because that means that the Ukrainians could not advance over the whole entire field with armor support. They could only take advantage of areas with flat ground, and they would have to move around large, I guess you could say, depressions in the ground. And so that way the tanks don't have to drive over a bridge that can't carry their weight. It could be a limiting factor, but at the same time, an Abrams provides a massive amount of crew protection, and that was actually proven just a couple of days ago during a training accident with an M1A2. And I'll pull up this video for y'all. Training accident. Here we go. I believe it was on October 5th, right here. Here you go. Yep. This was on October 5th. This is a U.S. M1A2 Abrams at Fort Irwin that had a training accident. Something happened. We don't know what. We haven't gotten the full story as to what happened to this Abrams at the training ground, but something blew up the ammunition. In a Russian tank, everyone in the tank would die at that point because the ammunition is stored right under him. It would blow upwards and kill them all. The Abrams, on the other hand, was able to contain the entire force of this explosion of the ammunition in the blowout panels. And I don't think a lot of people know about this, but this is a genius invention and a creation on almost all Western main battle tanks. You can see this on the Challenger 2, the Leopard, and also the M1 Abrams like we're showing right here. And if I can show you all the roof of this Abrams, let's see here. This is from some game called Armored Warfare, but I guess this is about the best you can see it. these panels back here on the back of the tank's turret, they have the round kind of circles on top of them in a way that are, I guess you could say, elevated. You know, they're not flush with the tank. Those things are the blowout panels, and that's where the ammunition in the tank is stored. And if we get a cutaway of an M1 Abrams, you can also see that here from the side. As we can see, oh, that's not really a good illustration. How about this one? As you can see, this is the crew compartment, and the ammunition is at the back of the tank under those square rectangles. Those rectangles, when the ammunition explodes, blow up. They blow outwards away from the tank, and that becomes an open area for all of the explosive force to vent upwards and out of the tank from. It is a genius invention, because if the ammunition is ever hit and explodes in an Abrams, it is not going to kill the crew. All of the pressure will be vented straight up out of the top of the tank, where it won't kill anyone. And so while this tank looks about as bad off as a Russian T-72 or a T-80 that got hit and destroyed in Ukraine, believe it or not, the entire crew of this Abrams survived without any injuries. Can you believe that, Matthew, looking at this picture? This thing is done for.
So you're telling me that people survived from that?
All 4 of them survived without even a single cut or a bruise.
I'm not even sure how it's possible, really.
It's possible with the power of blowout panels, but that tells you the kind of protective qualities that the M1 Abrams has. And in terms of keeping crews alive, tank crews alive, the Abrams would certainly, any Western tank for that matter, the Leopard 2, could also keep crews alive a lot better than a Russian tank could. The Ukrainians are using nothing but Soviet-era tanks, just like the Russians are. They're using T-64s, T-80s, T-72s, and so when they get hit directly, the ammunition explodes and kills the entire crew. And also, this is something else that's crazy and just insane when you really look at it. T-72 cutaway, because I think that one will show it quite well. The ammunition in a T-72 is stored in a carousel under the turret. And this is something that was talked about a lot if you ever watched documentaries way back in the day, the early 2000s, on the Battle of 73 Easting, is that these things would pop like fireworks and the turrets would go flying because all of the explosive force inside the tank is right under the turret. It's right under the crew. In fact, Matthew, the crew are positioned right on top of the ammunition. So when anything hits the crew compartment, it hits the ammunition as well, and if anyone survived the initial hit, the ammunition will make sure that they get killed anyways. So in terms of survivability, these things are the most dangerous death traps on Earth, and that's why any Western tank that has a blowout panel and also more advanced thermals and I guess you could say laser range finding and targeting and all that sort of stuff, all the neat gizmos that the modern Western tanks come with, would be much more beneficial to the Ukrainians than the T-72, the T-80s, or the T-64s, even if it did limit them on what kind of terrain and what kind of bridges the Abrams could cross. But still, it's a great point. It is a little bit logistically challenging, and maybe we could send over some vehicles that would make it a lot less strenuous on the Ukrainian army to use these tanks. And so with that, I hope that addresses that fairly well. That was quite a long rabbit hole, but I hope I prove the point that Western tanks in terms of crew survivability are far superior to anything that the Russians or the Soviets made during their time. And so with that, we are on to the final question of this segment, and then we're moving on into the Russian and location unknown news.
All right, so for the final one of the segment, we have a $20 super chat from Compound David, who says, I think Ukraine will attack from the south of the Dnipro River, crossing at the dam, not allowing any Russians to cross the river, surrounding and trapping thousands of Russians. Enforcer for President 2040.
And I thank you so much for the support for my presidency in 2040. Of course, I thank you so much once again. It helps me out a lot to know that I already have voters secured this far ahead, and I believe that it will hopefully grow in the meantime. And to address that, I cannot get into the exacts of a Ukrainian offensive. I don't really want to. I'm not going to say whether that is what I think they will do or not. But I would have to say that the Ukrainians, once again, just to make it vague, I'm very sorry about this. It is a vague statement. The Ukrainians are going to do quite well in Kherson. That's almost a proven certainty at this point, especially based off of their prior history over the past month and a half. With their offensives in the northeast and in Kherson, I believe they will be met with a large amount of progress, whatever their strategy and whatever their plan is. But I thank you so much once again for the support, and I thank you so much once again for giving me your vote as President of the United States. And with that, we are now going to be moving into Russia and out of that question segment and to the town of Ryazan, where today we saw Vladimir Putin has made a special visit to a training camp. This video, according to the Russians, was taken today. And we have no reason, so far, this could be disproven later, we have no reason to believe that this video was taken at a later date before the war. So it appears that this may be the first time ever that Putin has left Moscow and the bunker to go out and see the largely incompetent Russian armed forces. Here's the video. You know what I can't stand is the stupid, like, crip walk that he's doing. Look at it.
He's always like trying to be like a try-hard, like macho man.
Yeah. Also, you can see Mr. Construction Worker standing over here. You know, the Minister of Defense for the Russian Armed Forces, who was a... Keep in mind, everyone, the man was a construction manager before he became the Minister of Defense in Russia. This guy has no... Like, this is one thing I find funny. And I gotta say this, because, man, I think this is hilarious. A lot of people say that I have no military experience. They're right with that, of course. But one thing that's funny to me is that this guy has no experience at all. He doesn't even know about history or anything. All he knew was how to lay mortar and a brick, and somehow this man is now like second in line in charge of the Russian armed forces. I have no idea why. I think it's all just a bunch of political corruption in Russia, because that's the only explanation.
Enforcer, like perfect analogy. Remember the Chernobyl movie or miniseries?
I was
working in a shoe factory,
and
now I'm in charge.
Glory to the
That's like the
workers of the
Soviet,
world.
like Russia way.
That is, they take the most incompetent, inexperienced people, and they put them in charge. Now, one thing I have to say though, and of course to a small amount of my credit, is that you don't have to be in the military to know, and of course, being in the military gives you a lot of on-the-ground experience of what it's really like to be an infantryman and stuff. But you don't have to be in the military to know how it turns out. Reading a history book, believe it or not, will get you a pretty good ways of the way strategically in understanding how wars generally turn out on a very broad scale. I will say this, a history book will not tell you most of the time why wearing a certain kind of boot and walking for 25 miles in them is uncomfortable, or the exact feet per second that a 30-06 bullet will travel at over a given area of 2.5 miles with 70% humidity at 80 degrees Fahrenheit. It will not tell you that, but it will tell you how the thing will generally turn out. This guy, on the other hand, he doesn't even have that knowledge. Like when the Russians ask him, so what should our invasion be like? It should be like a dump truck backing into building. We should make sure it's full of bricks and moving fast. Like, that's all this guy knows. And it's just, it's lame to see that he just, this whole picture's sad. Anyways, we're going to move on to the next video, because that's not the only one we have. We have a second one of Putin shooting a rifle there.
Патронники там. Так точно.
We can see that, of course, to make Putin seem like the ultimate macho man, they couldn't give him the standard infantryman's rifle, which is an AK-74. Oh, no. Or an AK-12. Oh, no. They had to give him what just evokes the masculinity in a man. The SVD. The singular value decomposition. No, the SVD rifle. Right here. They gave him that. You can hardly see it through that net, but it's the exact same scope, the exact same stock, everything about it. This is what the Spetsnaz are known to use in pop culture. This thing was also used by the Taliban and the Mujahideen during the Soviet-Afghan War, the captured ones, to pick off Russians from a pretty good distance. So I like that it's got a good history. But anyways, let's watch him fire it.
Wait, Enforcer, you know something that bothers me? These dictators like Putin and like Kim Jong-un, they're like the jack of all trades. They know how to do everything perfectly. They bring them to drive a truck. They know how to do it perfectly. Shoot a gun. They know how to do it perfectly.
Fly a plane.
They're just like, yeah, they know how to do everything all of a sudden because they're the dictator.
Yeah, you know, it's always weird to me. You know, it's like they got to go on a mission to prove that they know everything. And you know, sometimes it's good to say that you don't know everything, And of course, I know that someone's about to say, this guy is KGB trained. Come on, do y'all really think, like, the KGB went around and assassinated political dissidents? You didn't need a sniper rifle for that in the Soviet Union. You literally just picked them off the street and brought them into a room. So I know that it's probably highly unlikely that he ever went and shot an SVD in training for it to a large extent. Or if he even shoots SVDs regularly, why would he? That doesn't even make any sense, especially based off of who he is and where he's come from. But let's watch him fire it. That's kind of odd. Out of that whole clip, he only like fired like 1 or 2 shots. I know it's a sniper rifle, everyone. But still, you would think he'd fire a little bit quicker just to make himself look a little bit more macho. But I guess it's the slow, calculated shot that makes him look like the ultimate master and thinker. And yeah, I bet you that's what's going through everyone's head. They were like, let's make this a whole propaganda shoot. Shoot real slow so that way people think you're cold and calculating. That's probably what went into that theory. Now see him wiping off his vest like, look.
Wait a minute. We don't get to see his groupings?
No, we don't get to see his groupings? Are you kidding? Like,
I wonder why.
His groupings were probably on all sides of the target, the top, the bottom, and the far left and the far right. You're not gonna see that.
They show us him shooting the gun at a target, and they don't show us what he actually hit. That's amazing.
Nah, listen, we can't see that kind of stuff. And anyways, if they had shown it, I promise you, this man right here, Mr. Igor Idronovich, would have walked up with a little pin cushion and started poking holes in the center of it to make it look like it was.
So.
Yeah, there's no way that there wouldn't have been a massive amount of tomfoolery involved in showing his grouping. So with that, that's the end of that video, and it's kind of odd to see Putin around so many firearms, and I've got to tell you, I would say, considering that this man literally sits at the end of a 50-foot long table to make sure he doesn't get assassinated by people like Sergei, it goes to say the least that all of that gunfire in the background was probably edited in, because we never saw anyone at this range, I believe, firing a gun. Or they got the most loyal people in the Russian army there to do that propaganda shoot. There's no way that he was walking around people with Russians with guns after the partial mobilization without any kinds of precautions being taken. And so with that, those are the ends of those 2 videos, and it's kind of sad to see that apparently he made it out of it okay. Moving on into Moscow, however, we can see that the Russians have now brought up the topic of suicide drones. So, now that we have some Russian state media bullcrap going on again, let's listen to what they've got to say about the suicide drones.
Как, в принципе, изменится мировой рынок, спросим у эксперта. В нашей студии Руслан Пухов, директор Центра анализа стратегий и технологий, член Общественного совета при Министерстве обороны России.
Руслан Николаевич. Сильно лодку раскачивать не будем, поэтому я очень прошу вас сильно на этих иранских, потому что это классика истории. Жопа есть, а слова нет, да? Мы все знаем, что они иранские, но власти не признали.
Руслан Николаевич.
Пойдем.
Did anyone catch that?
Wait a minute, what did he just say?
I don't think he realized that they were live. He was giving them like stage notes. Let's go back and listen to those stage notes real quick, because those were pretty specific. Let's go back and just watch the whole thing, actually, because this was all wild. Let's see. So, here is our expert, Ruslan Nikolaevich Pukov. Pukov, head of the Center for Analysis of Strategies and Technologies.
Как, в принципе, изменится мировой рынок, спросим у эксперта.
So the guy has a government position. Keep that in mind.
В нашей студии Руслан Пухов, директор Центра анализа стратегий и технологий, член Общественного совета.
Member of the Civil Council at the Ministry of Defense of Russia. So this guy has an official government position within the Ministry of Defense.
При Министерстве обороны России.
Руслан Николаевич.
He gets up, walks forward. It looks like they were supposed to cut to a commercial break because the music swelled at this point. And so I guess that they were going to have a minute, I guess, for a little commercial ad to run, and then they were going to come back to him after he sat down. But they didn't. Now we can hear him say to the reporters, let's not rock the boat too hard regarding those Iranian drones.
Сильно на этих иранских, потому что это классика.
This is a classic situation. People have a buttocks, but we don't pronounce the word ass.
Слова нет, да?
What the hell does that even mean? I'm not getting it.
I don't even know. That phrase made no sense. We all know that they are Iranian, but the authorities did not recognize this. And so we can see him right here giving them stage notes. We are not going to recognize that the drones are Iranian. We're going to make them sound like they're Russian.
Власти не признали.
Руслан Николаевич.
Wow. Well, look at that, y'all. Y'all just saw the Russian propaganda machine on air, live from Russia. They actually sit over there when they're coming on TV and they pretty much bark out orders to these reporters like dogs about what they will and won't say and how they will say it. That is wild. And then we just saw it happen right there. You can't say that the Russians don't have some pretty heavy-handed handlers out there. This guy just walked up there and he was like, hey, stop talking like that. The official reports are that the Russian were going with it. And so with that, that's the end of that video, and keep that in mind, everyone. Next time you ever watch anything from Russia, guys like these are behind the scenes, telling the editors, telling the news reporters, and the propaganda spin masters how to spin their stories and how to tell the tale of what happened in the war today. So don't take anything from the Russians with any kind of credibility, because that is what is behind the scenes. Some bald guy who just barks out orders about what will be said and won't said. And so with that, we're now going to be moving out of Russia and from all of the scenes of insanity that we've seen there today, and we're now going to be moving down into Ukraine again to cover our location unknowns. We have a massive amount of them today. Starting off with our first clip of the first TOW missile in Ukraine. A lot of firsts were made today. We actually saw the first use of a lot of American weapons in Ukraine, and I believe that's because the Lend-Lease finally did arrive, and they finally started to cross the borders, and we're now seeing a whole bunch of brand new toys for Ukrainian armed forces to use. And so, here is a TOW. And I was just talking about these the other day, if you remember, Matthew, how the Bradley carries TOWs and they're quite effective and all that.
Yes, I remember.
So the TOW missile, to give everyone a little bit of a backstory, just in case if you don't know what it is, the TOW missile is America's go-to ATGM that's been in service since the 70s. So it's about a 52-year-old, I guess you could say, anti-tank guided missile system. But one thing that is really interesting about it is that unlike, I guess you could say, a Kornets anti-tank guided missile system from Russia or something similar, it's not a direct impact weapon anymore. It does not have to hit the tank directly. In fact, it's time for me to pull out Microsoft Paint. So, Microsoft Paint. So, let's just say that this is the turret with T-72 from the front. We'll try and make sure that it's all symmetrical. We'll put the gun breech right here. We'll put the little night vision thing that they have on them right over here. There's the smoke grenade discharger somewhere around here. Of course, the gun about right there. I'm just having a fun time drawing. So anyways, getting to the TOW. A lot of people think that anti-tank guided missile systems have to explode directly onto the side of the tank. So that means that going off of a TOW, the original TOW, the TOW would have hit on the side of the turret, and it would have gone in right there. It would have, and of course, let me do this real quick. Let me erase that grenade discharger right there, like so. Got a few pixels left. There we go. We finally got rid of it all. So we'll go back to this. So the T-72 has some what's called quartz armor. It's made up of some kind of a composite material. It gets thinner when it gets to the top of the turret, but almost the entirety of the front of the turret, all the way to about 90 degrees on both the left and right, have this very thick quartz composite armor. That TOW would hit that armor and either dissipate in it, or it would create some kind of spalling of the composite that would then blast out into the crew cab. Now, this is okay, but once you start to add Contact 5 armor and other things to it, the armor protection does get greater, and it becomes harder to penetrate the turret of any kind of tank with that in mind and directly hitting it. And so the West came up with something genius. The TOW 2 and the TOW 2B, specifically the TOW 2B. Instead of hitting it directly on the side, the TOW 2B flies well above the turret, so your crosshair will be looking at this turret, but the TOW will be flying feet above it, and it will fly right over the top of the T-72, and it explodes downwards. So the missile's flying over the tank, I guess you could say parallel to it, but the explosion comes out of the bottom of the tow and sprays downwards into the tank where there's no armor. And so it blows straight through the top of the turret, right down into the ammunition of the tank, blowing it up and destroying it. And I believe that is the exact kind of tow system that the Ukrainians were provided, because if we watch this video, it looks a lot like that. So we can see the tow system being lined up onto this Russian vehicle. We can now see the tow get fired. It's traveling on its way. And actually, looking at the video again, it may be a tow 2 or a tow I or a tow, because it actually did hit directly on. It hit directly on the side. It's due to that, I'm believing, and of course this is just a assumption because getting into the weeds like this is really difficult, but it's either a tow I, which is an improved tow, or an I tow, or a tow 2. Either one, because it hit directly onto the side. That's what those variants do, but it does have a decent amount of, I guess you could say, penetrating power, and it was able to get through a decent amount of the armor wherever it hit because it did decimate the tank. But still, it's nice to see that some tows have finally made their way into Ukraine, and that the Ukrainians are using them immediately. Moving on into our next clip, we also saw that it was a first today because the Ukrainians fired off their first Hellfire missiles.
Наш.
Where you see them setting up the launcher out there in the field.
Братья, блядь. Снимай, снимай, ебашим, сука, пидоров. Давай, давай, давай.
And there it goes. That honestly seemed like, is it just me, Mather? Does it seem like they almost pulled this off like a 4th of July fireworks thing that you do in the middle of the street?
Yeah, it's pretty close.
Yeah.
Снимай, снимай, ебашим, сука, пидоров.
Put in reverse, Terry.
Yeah.
And there it goes. And there goes the second one.
Давай ракету.
And with that, that's the end of the video, but it's great to see that the Swedish, actually, believe it or not, provided these versions of the Hellfires. These are, let me actually pull up the exact name of these. Swedish Hellfire. Dang it. The RBS-17. It's an anti-ship missile, but you can use them against ground targets, and we can see the Ukrainians doing that right there, right now. And so it's nice to see, and I'm glad to know, that the Ukrainians are getting a whole wide variety of weapons now from both the Swedes, which have an impressive arms industry, and also the United States with the tow. We didn't get to see these hit their target, though, but I'm assuming that they did a fairly good job. Hellfires aren't known for being a weak missile. With that, we're now going to be moving on to the next bit of Location Unknown news, where we can see one of those UR-77 mine-clearing vehicles in action on the Ukrainian side. We can see it firing off its charge.
Пошел он ракетами.
We can see them waiting for the explosion.
Курка натягивает.
And there's the explosion. And I think a path has бeen cleared for the vehicles.
Пиндюрило.
Такой по посадке хуярит. Раздрует иде.
Довго витягує, блядь.
We now see another mine clearer going off in the distance.
Диви, зараз слідуючий. Зараз центральний. Тут центральний. Ні, це теж урка.
And with that, that's the end of the video. It is really interesting to see the Ukrainians having such coordination with their mine-clearing vehicles and trying to clear paths for their vehicles to advance with. And it shows you that they are on the offensive. Moving on to the next bit of Location Unknown news. You got to see this one to believe it, Matthew. I can't even say this. I think everyone's going to be blown away with this one. So I'm just going to show it to y'all and let y'all be blown away.
О, що ми сьогодні вже зробили. Тут дорога в бліндаж, то зразу баня. Тут будемо топити воду гріти. Тут вже у нас Макарович топку змурував, яку ми вчора з Вадимом зварили. Поставили. придбанник. І саме головне.
No way.
It's a sauna! They built a sauna in the trenches!
What did they use to line the walls with? What kind of material is that? Like insulation or something?
It looks like some kind of a foil. Well, yeah, it kind of does look like insulation, actually. They built a sauna in the trenches. These guys are living it up. I mean, like, I've never even been in a sauna. I've heard a lot about them. But I mean, like, you know,
let me see. Let me check the weather real quick in the chat. Let's see. It's currently 50 degrees over there. So it's not that chilly. Cold, but it is cold.
It is getting a little cold. And I guess, Matthew, that the Ukrainians and the Russians can share in saying one thing, but not in the same place. Gee, it's like a sauna in here.
Yes, literally.
For the Ukrainians, they're in a sauna. For the Russians, they're inside of a tank when they say that. And so
the Ukrainians can handle the heat. The Russians can't.
Yeah, they can handle the heat. When it gets a little too hot, get out of the kitchen. And it looks like the Ukrainians get right out of the kitchen and right into the sauna, just enjoying their luxury trenches. I bet you the rent in this trench is like $5,000 a month. So their entire salary is going towards keeping the sauna running. But hey, what can you complain? I mean, like, it's got some nice amenities. It's got a sauna. And so with that, we're going to be moving on from this clip and into the next one, but still really cool to see that the Ukrainians have a sauna of all things inside of a trench. Moving on to the next one, we can see that the Ukrainians captured another Russian tank. And they're hauling it away. It's a T-72B specifically. Also, they got rock music playing. When you see some Ukrainians joking around on the captured Russian tank, throwing up some peace signs. And it's so weird to watch tank treads move at a certain frame rate because it looks like they're hardly moving.
Yes.
Also, I like this guy's original Cossack haircut, and he's wearing those giant goggles at the same time. It's kind of a little funny looking. But they're just chilling back there, and they've gotten a brand new T-72B. And they're using a T-72B to drive it away.
You know something, Enforcer, I just remembered. What happened to the battle logs they used to have on some of these like tanks? Is that a thing anymore?
They do still have the battle logs. We have seen them every once in a while, but I think that's in some cases they don't carry them around much anymore. I believe that was more of a World War II thing and an early to mid Cold War thing instead of a late Cold War thing. Though I have seen the occasional one, and maybe we'll see a video of that later on in the night. Of course, that's not suggesting we will, but hopefully we will. With that, we're moving on into the next clip of news where we see a Ukrainian jet fly over a Ukrainian helicopter. A really cool video of the two in the same place. We can also see that this helicopter from the shadow is an Mi-24, and flying right over it is a beautiful Ukrainian Su-27. With that nice camouflage, of course. Really cool to see. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into our next clip of Location Unknown News, where we can see some Ukrainian jets soaring above once more. This time, it appears to once again be an Su-25. See it flying incredibly fast over the railroad tracks and the fields of Ukraine. We don't know exactly where they are, but we can see that this main pilot is being accompanied by the wingman who has the camera and is making sure to wing the man in a way. We see them continuing to fly along, and what did that last sentence mean? I have no idea. But we can see them continuing to fly along over the fields at a pretty low altitude and in a pretty close formation. It's really cool to see the Ukrainian Air Force and the pilots are still alive and still conducting sorties to this very moment. I just think it would be so fun to fly an Su-25, or any aircraft for that matter, that the Ukrainians have been using. It always looks nice from the cockpit footage. With that,
it always looks so cool, like looking at it in videos. But I know in reality, it's probably like really tough to like handle the G-forces and stuff for a long time.
It probably does get exhausting. And another thing that probably gets tiresome is all of that noise. Because one thing that a lot of people may know if you've ever flown on a passenger plane, and it's a lot more pronounced from what I've been told in military aircraft, is the loud noise made from the engines. Like in that cockpit, it sounds like one of those machines at the dentist that like suck the water out of your mouth, like it goes.
Yes.
It sounds like
those
that.
traumatizing sounding machines they have.
Yeah, it sounds like it's sucking your lungs out. But it's almost like that the whole time in the cockpit of one of those aircraft, especially the older ones. I think they've largely tried to fix that in some of the newer aircraft, at least in terms of cockpit footage that I've seen online. But still, an aircraft like that, it would sound horrendous in there. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the next bit of Location Unknown news, where you see a destroyed Rossiyski tank. And of course, a revisiting of an old song that we played before on this channel.
Горіли танки біля хати, валялись орки тут і там, а молодого бля бурята. Пакет збирали по частям, а молодого бля бурята. В пакет збирали по частям. Ну що ж ти?
You can get his SoundCloud. I have a link.
Now look. I'm not making fun of the guy or anything, but this guy's singing about as good as I would sing.
Oh man, you know, we could try and have a karaoke night on this channel, but I don't think anyone would survive.
Мозги свої потрібно мать на смерть дитину. Проводжати і жопу Путіну лежать.
And so with that, that's the end of the video, and I gotta say, it's nice to see that another T-72B3 is heading early grave. The Russians are running out of these things. And of course, that is something that cannot be overstated, as we're about to move directly from this video and on into our casualty statistics. And so let's take a look at the Russian losses as of today. So, as of today, the Russian armed forces have lost 66,650 men. Another 370 today. 66,650 soldiers killed. Most likely twice or triple that wounded. 2,567 tanks destroyed, with another 13 lost today. 5,255 armored personnel carriers. 1,646 artillery pieces. 372 MLRSs, 189 anti-aircraft systems, 269 planes. So, funnily enough, man, I was just thinking about this. All 273 of those planes we said would verse the F-22s earlier, all of them have been destroyed except for 4.
Well, how about that?
How about that? 243 helicopters. The Russians lost another one today. 16 boats, including the Moskva. 1,311 drones, with another 25 shot down just today. 147 special equipment vehicles, including an additional one today. Now, it's happened, everyone. Today was the day, and this is big news. The Russians have lost 100% of the supply trucks that they entered this war with that were military in origin. So your Kamazes and your Ural 4320s, they had 4,000 of those exactly that were located to logistical units that would help to supply their frontline forces. And now today, with an additional 6 supply vehicles being destroyed, all 4,000 of those original supply trucks have been lost in this war. The Russians have lost their logistical branch completely. Everything they're working off of now is a civilian commandeered vehicle, or a vehicle that has been pulled out of storage to be used in the logistics forces. They do not have a single original supply truck that was in the start of this war left. They are all gone. And also, the Ukrainians have shot down an additional 6 cruise missiles today, bringing that number up to 329. And so with that, that is the end of our casualty report. And I gotta say, y'all, it's looking pretty positive these days. Of course, I know that someone's about to say the loss of life is never positive. With the war being fought with soldiers, this right here is showing that this war has to end at some point. It can't go on forever. And so with that, we're now going to be moving into our next clip of news, where we can actually see the Ukrainians using an Mi-8 to drop soldiers off. And so here's the video, a very quick one, of Ukrainian soldiers disembarking from an Mi-8. So with that, that's the end of that video, but really cool to see that the Ukrainians are disembarking their soldiers from their helicopters, a very rare sight. In fact, that's the first one of the war. Moving on to our final bit of Location Unknown news, we can also see a massive load of abandoned and destroyed Russian vehicles on this unknown road in an unknown location. as this music plays. We can see 1 MTLB, 2 MTLBs, 3 MTLBs, 4 MTLBs, all abandoned or destroyed in the exact same spot of this road. That is $1 million worth of armored personnel carriers that is sitting right there in that crossroads, and a lot of scrap metal as well. And so with that, that's the end of that video, and it's nice to see that the Russians just aren't winning at all. With that, we're now going to be moving down into our last bit of news for the night, which will include the northeastern area of Ukraine and the speech from President Zelenskyy. But before we get to all of that, we're going to address our polls real quick. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so this time we have just 2 polls to address, and the first one said, should we record our own version of the Ukrainian anthem on bagpipes? It looks like 62% said yes, if we can, and also 38% said nah, no bagpipes. So it looks like a decent amount of people would like to hear it, but it's just a question of if we can actually do it or not.
And that may be a bit of a tough one because the bagpipes are quite loud. And so I'll have to see if it's possible, and I'll also have to even see if I'm refreshed enough on how to play a bagpipe to be able to belt one out. But we'll see. And if I can, we'll try and add a whole bunch of instruments to it to make it sound a little bit better. And maybe that will be our intro from now on. And, I mean, like, it would be cool if we did it the right way. But I got to see if the bagpipe even has the range to play that kind of, I guess you could say, anthem. Because the Ukrainian anthem has a lot of, I guess you could say, range in it, and from its highest notes to its lowest notes, and I don't know if the bagpipes can get all of those notes. And so with that, I hope that answers that poll fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and next up, the second poll said, do you think the Russian news guest is going to fall from a very high window? It looks like 72% said yes, windows are in his future, 19% said maybe, and 9% said no, he's safe, he's all good. Now for me, I think that it's a maybe, but if he were to fall from a window, it would probably be a 5th or 10th story window. But Enforcer, what do you think?
I would have to say if anyone was falling from windows, it would definitely be that guy. I think windows are in his future. I'm not really one for seances, but I think if you did a seance or got out a Ouija board, it would say windows are in your future. Or the next fortune cookie. Either one would work. I think the fortune cookie is a lot less ominous than the other 2 options, but moving on from that, Matthew, that just reminded me of a very interesting rabbit hole to go down. Have you ever heard of the window tax?
I haven't.
So, British buildings without windows. Let me show you something really interesting. You see, let me go through and try and find the best picture I can of it. You see this building here? And how you can clearly see that there were window frames in this one part of the building, but they have now been filled in with bricks.
Right.
So, this is probably one of the most clearest forms from the 1600s of British people trying to avoid taxes. Almost like everyone does still, I believe. I think most people are trying to avoid paying as many taxes as they can. But to explain this story, the British government came up with a new tax in the mid to late 1600s called the window tax, and the idea of it was that if you had a certain number of windows, you would have to pay a certain amount in taxes, meaning that this tax would pretty much target the wealthier people in the country. Well, they didn't really take kindly to that, and they decided to take out most of their windows, as long as, you know, it got them below the limit where they didn't have to be taxed, and they just bricked up the windows. So that way they wouldn't be eligible for the window tax and have to pay it. And so that's why, if you ever go through Britain, you'll see a whole bunch of buildings like this one, where you can clearly tell it had windows, but they've been bricked up since. And there are no windows, is because almost 400 years ago, some guys were trying to avoid paying taxes.
That's messed up.
It's actually kind of funny. You can see
That's
it all
some really
over
deep analysis right there. That's messed up.
That's messed up, bro. But also, I hope y'all enjoyed that little, I guess you could say, story. And also, if y'all enjoyed that, I think I might try and make a video on that in the future. Of course, it may not be immediately, but it may be within the next few weeks. I think it's a really interesting story, and little fun facts like that are really cool. But with that, we're going to be moving on from that poll and on into the next one if we have one, and if not, we'll move into the questions.
All right, so that was the last poll for now. So up first from the Super Chats, this time we have a $50 Super Chat from Heather Burks. And thank you very much, Heather, for that support. Heather says, my husband and I watch every single night. Keep up the great work. Looking forward to voting for you in the future. And Slava Ukraine. And I have to say real quick, Enforcer, before you answer that, I think that's really cool that we have a bunch of couples and also entire families watching the stream. Like, that really made my night when I saw that Pack Rat's entire family was on here tonight. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's really cool. And also, I have met one of y'all in person. Jay Bagwell is actually the only fan that I've ever met in person. And he wasn't alone. He had his whole family with him, his son and his wife. I met them all, and they all watched the show. A lot of the time, from what I was told, together, and I thought that was really the coolest thing ever. I hung out with their family on the 4th of July. It was really fun. I was also doing a whole reenacting thing that day too, so they were there for it. It was just all in all a really cool day, and it was nice to meet all of them. And also, it's incredibly cool to know that we have so many families, like the wives, the husbands, the sons, and the daughters all watching the show at the same time. I think that's incredibly neat. And whichever one of y'all in y'all's family that started watching this first and then recommended it or showed it to the rest of your family and they started watching, I thank you so much. You may have single-handedly expanded the audience of this channel and its news by a massive load, and I thank you so much for that, because it really does help us out. And also, thank you so much for the massive amount of support. Through y'all's support, we are able to keep this channel running. We don't run ads on these streams. Well, real quick to say this again, because I know that a lot of people are going to be saying, that's not true. Considering that we played that Ukrainian anthem in tonight's stream, I'm sure that we are going to be getting an email within the next few hours after the stream goes live saying that there is now a copyright claim on it and the copyright owner is now going to be running ads. Let me actually check. Yep, they're already going through and doing other ones. And so there will be ads on those. So about the last 8 streams, if you go back and try and watch those right now, they will all have ads running on them. We did not consent to those ads being run. Those are being run by the owner of the copyright of the Ukrainian anthem. So keep that in mind. We don't make anything off of ads on streams. If there are any, we didn't run them. Those are being run forcefully, pretty much. So if you want to support this channel, the best way to do it is through the super chats. That's really the only way we can be supported. YouTube takes 30% of it, we get the remaining 70%, and that is how we continue to do this as a full-time job. And so I thank you so much for your massive amount of support, and I thank you so much once again for your whole family watching this and all of y'all backing us up and supporting us throughout the entire ordeal. If it wasn't for viewers like y'all who have just supported us through and through, we wouldn't be here today. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And I've just got to say, thank you all so much for being a family of LSA soldiers. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
Ian, next up, we have a $20 super chat from Leaf Spring Army, who says, gentlemen, another night of the war. So there's all this crazy talk about the Russians blowing up the Nova Dam as a false flag, and then maybe using a tactical nuke in Kherson in retaliation. How do you think things will play out?
Can you reread that one again real quick?
Leaf Spring Army says, gentlemen, another night of the war. So there's all this crazy talk about the Russians blowing up the Nova Dam as a false flag, and then maybe using a tactical nuke in Kherson in retaliation. How do you think things play out?
Considering that that an SU-27 fired at a RAF surveillance aircraft today, I would have to say that I don't know. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility anymore, considering that that was about the baddiest thing I've ever heard. So with that in mind, I would have to say it's not really out of the realm of impossibility. Tactical nuke, though, I still think that's out of the realm of possibility. But blowing the dam and flooding everything downstream, that may happen. Also seeing that the citizens of Kherson are being evacuated. We still don't know if it's just the collaborators or if it's all of them. That may also be going to show that something dreadful is going to be happening, and they're trying to make sure to make it look as not as bad as it can be, I guess is the best way to say it. But at the same time, they are preparing for it. So I'm not entirely sure, but it looks like they may be going in that direction. But I still think a tactical nuclear weapon will most likely not be used. And so with that, I hope I addressed that question fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support, and also take it with a grain of salt, because that is just my opinion, and it's really hard to get into the minds of the Russian command, see how crazy they are, and actually have an idea of what they think they're really going to be doing in the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, and we are on to the next one, and I believe this is the last one of the segment.
And it is. And it goes to Santiago Flores, who says, excuse me, I'm forgetting to say the donation amount tonight. I don't know what's wrong with me. But Santiago puts in a $20 donation and says, "Good evening for the pizza, donut, books, etc. fund to fund all the funds to help out and keep up the good work, guys."
And I thank you so much for the support. You've been around forever. And of course, you've been always sending in kind words. And I thank you so much for the kind words tonight. Matthew and me will be going through, and I just dropped a quarter.
What was that?
I just dropped a quarter. Sorry, everyone. Hang on just a minute. All right, there we go. I was trying to get a quarter out of my pocket because it was like jabbing into my thigh. So I just got it out and then dropped it immediately. So sorry about that. But getting back to that, I thank you so much once again for the support. It helps us out a great deal. And like I was saying, you have been around for an incredibly long time. And you supported this channel with your kind words since the beginning, and also through your support as well. And support, I hate to say this, but support means a lot more to us now than it ever has with what's going on in the background. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. It helps us out incredibly, and I thank you so much for your kind words as well. Every single one of y'all viewers who both support, don't support, who throw in likes, who throw in comments, y'all all mean oh so much to both Matthew and me. This channel means more to me than really anything else at this point. It's been a major driving factor of my life and what I've been doing for the past 8 months. It's something that I'm incredibly proud of. At this point, I feel like I tell almost everyone in the world what Matthew and me do, because I just think that it's an incredibly great thing, and I think y'all are incredibly great people. And I love to think that people come in here and see the wonderful things that we've all done together as the Lee Spring Army, the channel, through the fundraisers, through what we do each night. It's incredible, and I got to thank each and every one of you, and thank you so much once again for your support and kind words as well. It does mean a lot to us. And so with that, I believe that was the last question of this segment. And so with that, we're now going to be covering the remainder of the news for the night, starting off in the farthest northeast near Pokrovsk, where we saw that the Ukrainians advanced today across some open ground. Let's take a look. When you see it's a BTR 60, it's moving on through the fields.
Ох, він і вонючий, блядь.
And with that, that's the end of the video, but it's nice to see that these Ukrainian forces are advancing onto Russian positions and retaking the ground that is Ukraine's. Moving on into the next clip of news, further down the line and closer to the town of Svatove, we saw that the Ukrainians dropped some bomblets on the Russians to great effect. And I gotta say, a real great effect, so here's the video. When you see the Ukrainians scouting out the Russians, when you see the bomblet now hit the vehicle, and the Russians are probably already running. Whether it took damage or not, it's not the question. The question is, are the Russians scared? And they are. When you now see another bomblet being dropped onto what looked like some kind of a trailer or something similar, it hit dead on, and it looks like it may have gone through, because we do see smoke kind of like, I guess you could say, seeping around the edges. We can see that they're dropping more bomblets onto that object, and now it is smoking a little bit more. They've now dropped another, or something exploded inside of it. And now we can see a healthy dose of white smoke coming out, which shows that there may be some kind of ammunition cooking off inside of it. That actually looks like it might be a BMP of a sort, and now it's really been hit. Also, someone said it's a BDM, and I think it's most likely a BMD. BDM. BDM. APC. So it is a BMD. It's a BMD. I had to make sure real quick. But there is a BMD right there. They're very ugly. I can't stand these things. They just look stupid. I don't know what it is. Either it's the small, goofy-looking wheels that look like there's some kind of cartoon version of a pumpkin, or it's the terribly shaped hull. Something about it doesn't really jive right. And then it's got this BMP-3-ish turret on such a goofy-looking hull. And of course, vehicles are more so rated for performance than, I guess you could say, looks, but the other stupid thing about it is that it doesn't really have room to carry the infantry inside the vehicle, so they sit on this park bench-looking thing behind the turret, which is even dumber. Like, this tank is just dumb, and dumber all around, and I just cannot stand the look of it. It's just an ugly tank. And so with that, we're now going to be moving on into the next clip of news south of Svatove, where we saw a Ukrainian sniper at work. And so here's the video. We hear the dog, and the rock music starts to fade in as this sniper gets ready to do his job. This man is working the 9 to 5, and he's getting ready to show the Russians what the 9 to 5 is all about. We now see them firing at the Russians, and we see one go down.
Whoa.
Oh. We need some air horn noises played over this.
You know, something I've never thought about is how long it takes the bullet to actually reach the target as a sniper.
Oh, it takes such a long time. It's crazy to think that, because, you know, of course, like Matthew and me, I'll just let y'all know, we're not exactly marksmen. I think I can get like an 1.5-inch grouping at, I think it was 300 yards. Yeah, it was like 300.
It was 300.
It was 300 yards with an iron sight on a 1903. And if y'all have ever seen the iron sight on a 1903, y'all will know that it's a pretty tough thing to see through. So I feel pretty proud of that fact. I've never shot a rifle with a scope on it yet. So hopefully one day I will. But I've been able to get an 1.5-inch grouping, and the bullet travels so quickly over the course of 300 yards that there really isn't a lot of time in between pulling the trigger and the rifle, well, the bullet hitting the target. If the rifle was hitting the target, I would just be flinging the rifle at the target, but the bullet hitting the target, there's not a lot of time in between. So it's crazy to see videos like this where it's total, just complete seconds of the bullet just traveling through air. And Edgy number 1 said, you have to take into account the rotation of the Earth. What is that called, Matthew? It has a specific name, the equation that has to be used.
You got me on that one.
The Coriolis effect? Yeah, the Coriolis effect, which is the rotating of the Earth. I got the name a little wrong, but I'm glad to know that I still kind of had the gist of what the name of that was. So with that, that's the end of this video, but it's nice to see that the Ukrainian snipers are starting to be used in mass. We're starting to see a lot of videos of them, and they're incredibly effective. Moving on further down the line to the area of Krasnoyarsk, we saw that the Ukrainians were once again advancing through the field. We don't know if this is exactly accurate or not, but we can see them moving forward through this, what appears to be overly ripe wheat field. And it's very neat to see that the Ukrainians are covering even more ground than before. With that, that's the end of the video, and it's very nice to see that the Ukrainian forces are advancing in a lot of videos that we've seen today, but sadly we cannot report on any kind of frontline movements as of right now because we haven't been able to confirm them. Moving on down towards the area of Verkno-Kamyanka, we also saw a really cool picture. I love this one. It was a picture of volunteers holding a U.S., a British, and a Ukrainian flag, and standing on the remains of a destroyed and tattered Russian flag. These men, right here, are all volunteers, either from the United States or the United Kingdom, that have joined together in the common struggle to make sure that Ukraine remains a free and sovereign nation, and it's very cool to see the flag of the United States and the flag of the United Kingdom, both visually distinct, impressive, and very nice flags of very dignified countries out there on this front line, helping the Ukrainians to fight back for what is theirs. And to think that these guys came from thousands of miles away, specifically from the United States, to fight in a war that isn't even theirs. And when I say that, this war is everyone's, of course, and we have a responsibility to ensure that the Ukrainians are able to continue fighting on with the arms and weapons that are provided. But this war isn't really theirs. This isn't their land. This isn't their nation they're fighting for. They decided to come over here and fight for it just because of the moral principle of it. And to think that these American and British soldiers have done that, it's an amazing thing to see. And I think that this is a great picture that should be put down in history books in the future to show the solidarity that the entire world had behind the Ukrainians at this time of need. And with that, we're now going to be moving out of the area of Verkno-Kamyanka, and while we had that incredibly cool picture to show, we sadly cannot report of any frontline movements in that area as of today. However, in the direction of Soledar and Yakovlivka, we did see the glorious trash cannon has been brought around. The Russians have finally moved the S-60s to the front lines and are starting to use them. Here's the video. I think we can play a little clip of this because the music probably is copyrighted, but I don't think like 3 seconds of it will matter. So y'all listen to this terrible clanky gun just struggling and nearly buckling, trying to fire off the rounds it's shooting. Oh, oh man. Oh my gosh. This thing was put into service in 1950, and the Russians are using it, unironically, as an actual battlefield weapon. The second, quote-unquote, the second most powerful army in the world using an anti-aircraft gun from the 50s on the front lines. That's how badly they're doing at this point.
If anything could make a leaf spring cry, this would be it.
I think it would, and I think that I guess the recoil springs in that thing ought to be replaced with leaf springs, because for some reason it sounded like they were almost on the breaking point. I don't know. It may have something to do with this being a 77-year-old gun being used and put through the rigors of modern war, but I don't know. That might just be a small factor. Moving on out of the area of Yakovlivka and down towards the direction of Bakhmut, we can see that some heavy battles have occurred today in between the Ukrainians and the Russians. The Russians have once again tried to assault the Ukrainian positions near Bakhmut, and pillars of smoke were rising from the battlefield as the Ukrainians and the Russians duked it out over who would control this area of Ukraine. And at the end of the day, it still stands as Ukrainian. Ukrainian flags wave over Bakhmut, and the Russians have not taken the town. And with that, that's the end of the video. And it's very good to know that those pillars of smoke were rising because the Russians were not succeeding at their offensives, and the Ukrainians were holding the line like they have for months in this area. Moving on even further down the front line and past the area of Bakhmut, we have had absolutely no news to report all the way from Orlivka down to Vasilivka, south of Zaporizhia. Nothing has happened according to video evidence in this entire area today, which is very odd and quite bizarre. We usually have at least 1 or 2 things happen in Donetsk, or at least something happen on the Zaporizhia front line, but today these front lines have fallen completely silent, and we have no idea why. It may just be that both sides are prioritizing their efforts into other areas like Kherson and the northeastern regions, and so with that, we have now concluded all of the frontline news and all of the news from around the world on the war in Ukraine today. And so now it's time to move to the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and round out this day's news segment. And so with that, here's the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy on day 240 of the war in Ukraine and the first day of a brand new week.
Бажаю здоров'я, шановні українці. Сьогодні взяв участь в засіданні Європейської ради. Тема захисту України і нашої енергетичної безпеки була серед головних на цьому саміті. Поінформував колег про нові терористичні кроки Росії і про наші потреби, щоб захиститись і від цієї форми терору, направленого проти енергосистеми. Російські війська продовжують наносити удари ракетами і дронами по нашим електростанціям. Зрештою, і така російська підлість зазнає провалу. Ми робимо все, щоб отримати для України більше сучасних та ефективних систем ППО і ПРО. І буде день, коли ми прозвітуємо, що українське небо стало повністю захищеним від російських ракет, іранських дронів і будь-яких інших носіїв зла. Росія намагалась шантажувати Європу газом і нафтою, організовує диверсії на підводних газогонах і критично важливих кабелях в Європі, намагалась і намагається заморозити людей. А що відбулося? Росія лише втратила свою вагу на європейському енергетичному ринку, яку напрацьовувала ще з часів Брежнєва, і обов'язково отримує до себе ставлення як до найбільш відмороженого міжнародного злочинця. Це залишиться з Москвою дуже надовго і після цього російського керівника. Росія намагається знищити енергетичну систему України, змусити наш народ страждати ще більше, але лише змобілізує цим міжнародну спільноту, щоб вона ще більше допомагала нам і ще більше тиснула на державу-терориста. А усі наші видатки на захист наших енергооб'єктів і на відновлення нашої інфраструктури після російських терористичних ударів будуть відшкодовані за рахунок російських же активів. Кожен з терористів відповідатиме особисто за те, що робить, перед судом, а держава-терорист заплатить за свій терор ізоляцією, деградацією і активами, як державними, так і квазіприватних осіб, які пов'язані з цим російським режимом. Поінформував сьогодні європейців під час засідання Європейської ради і про черговий теракт, до якого Росія готується на Каховській гідроелектростанції. За нашою інформацією, агрегати і дамба Каховської ГЕС заміновані російськими терористами. Зараз всі у світі мають діяти потужно і швидко, щоб не допустити ще й такого російського теракту. Підрив дамби означатиме масштабну катастрофу. Звичайно, ми розуміємо, що окупантам байдуже, що буде з територією України. Вони цим своїм терактом можуть знищити, серед іншого, навіть можливість постачання води з Дніпра до Криму. Північно-Кримський канал у випадку руйнації дамби Каховський ГЕС просто зникне. І якщо Росія готує такий теракт, якщо вона всерйоз розглядає і такий сценарій, то це означає, що терористи дуже чітко усвідомлюють, їм не утримати не тільки Херсон, але й увесь південь нашої країни, зокрема і Крим. Ми маємо зараз усі разом, всі європейці, всі лідери світу, всі міжнародні організації дати зрозуміти державі-терористу, що такий теракт на Каховській станції означатиме абсолютно те саме, що і застосування зброї масового ураження. Наслідки для Росії мають бути відповідними. Світ повинен реагувати превентивно. Це ключове зараз. Принцип превентивного реагування на загрози безпеці нарешті повинен стати одним із базових для міжнародної політики. Сьогодні мав продуктивну розмову з президентом Німеччини, подякував йому і німецькому народу за підтримку України в боротьбі за свободу і за рішення про конкретну допомогу нашій державі. Зокрема, саме Німеччина стала першою країною, яка здійснила постачання нам сучасної системи протиповітряної оборони IRIS-T. Очікуємо постачання ще й інших таких систем, як від Німеччини, так і від інших наших партнерів. Провів переговори з президентом Швейцарії, який прибув сьогодні до Києва. Це показово для усього світу, що Швейцарія не залишається морально нейтральною, коли проти України і всієї Європи ведеться така терористична війна. Швейцарія підтримала санкційні пакети ЄС і надає нам допомогу гуманітарного характеру. Дуже предметно обговорили сьогодні з паном президентом питання відбудови України, можливості Швейцарії інвестувати у розвиток нашої економіки та інфраструктури. Обговорили також і питання відшкодування збитків, завданих Україні російським терором. Вдячні, що вже заморожено російських активів на 6,5 мільярдів. Цю роботу треба продовжувати. І це те, в чому Швейцарія також має не залишитись морально нейтральною. Окремо і дуже предметно обговорили можливості Швейцарії допомогти з діджиталізацією в Україні та відновленням телекомунікаційних систем на звільнених територіях. Ситуація на передовій залишається важкою, особливо на Донбасі. Той же Бахмутський напрямок і на деяких напрямках на півдні. Але тримаємо позиції, захищаємо нашу землю, поступово рухаємось, витискаючи ворога. І обов'язково забезпечимо Україні перемогу. Ввечері підписав черговий указ про нагородження наших воїнів. Орденами і медалями нагороджено 148 захисників і захисниць України. Хочу особливо відзначити сьогодні за поданням нашого військового командування воїнів із 7-ї зенітної самохідної артилерійської батареї 3-го зенітного ракетного дивізіону 1039-го зенітного ракетного полку. Під час чергового російського ракетного удару батарея здійснювала захист на півночі нашої країни і знищила ворожу ракету у Вишгородському районі Київської області. Дякую вам, хлопці, за відмінну службу, незмінно хороші результати. Кожна збита російська ракета – це врятовані життя наших людей, Цієї доби маємо і збиті ракети, і збиті іранські дрони. На жаль, збиваємо поки не всі. Є і влучання, є руйнування. Але зробимо все, щоб дати повний захист нашому небу. Терористи завжди програють, свобода завжди перемагає. Дякую всім, хто воює і працює заради України. Вічна слава нашому міцному народу. Слава Україні!
Now with that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, and that also wraps up our Day 240 news segment. It has been 240 days since the start of this war, and we have been here covering this news ever since day one, the very first hour that the very first missile slammed into the center of the city of Kyiv, starting this war as Russian forces began to cross the border on all sides. If you do enjoy this channel, you can count on that kind of news coverage to continue until this war is over. Please make sure to subscribe, like, and comment. It helps out this channel massively, and it helps us to keep this thing running. And so with that, I thank you all so much once again for watching, and this stream is not over. This stream has only just begun, as we're now moving into the question segment to answer everyone's super chats that have been sent in, and to also answer everyone's live chats as well. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and so for our final segment of questions, we have one poll to address, and the question is, do you like this Ukraine flag background or Zelensky's office as a backdrop for his speeches? And I did see several of you in the live chat say that it looks like Zelenskyy is now in a bunker, and after looking at it for a minute, it does look like a bunker, so very good observation on that one. Looks like 69% said, I like this one, and 31% said, I prefer his office instead. And I have to say, honestly, I prefer the office.
I have to be honest with y'all. I know that the majority of y'all liked his current setup. I like the office a lot better. The office had a lot of style and a lot of pizzazz. And honestly, after comparing it to the Oval Office, for some reason, the office of the president in Kyiv is far more ritzy and very nice compared to the Oval Office, which is really shocking. But then again, it's not really that shocking because, you know, the Oval Office was made in the 1920s, so, you know, it's not really that shocking, honestly. But anyways, moving on from that, I hope that addresses that poll fairly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so for now, that is our last poll, so we are moving on to our super chats, and let me grab one more thing from the live chat here. Don't want to miss that question. So first up, we have an $80 super chat from Turn Off Your Gaslight. Very generous of you, and thank you so much for also being a longtime channel viewer. He says, just a bit of support for the channel. Keep up the great work, and what you do is important. As others have done, pick a question from the chat. Cheers.
And thank you so much for your support. Turn off your gaslight. It has been a long time since you've thrown in support, and I thank you so much for throwing in some tonight. It helps out this channel a whole load, and it's the only way we're able to keep the thing running. It's the only way we actually make any kind of income off of this. And of course, that I always am very hesitant about saying that, but the honest truth is that the super chats support us and help us to keep this thing running. It helps us to pay the bills. It helps us to make sure that we're able to keep this channel running, and so I thank you so much for supporting us, so that way we can continue to do this as a full-time job and hopefully work on even more projects in the future. Matthew is already working on his next video, and I have high hopes that it'll be even better than the last. Of course, we won't go into too much detail on that again. I think we've done that like 3 or 4 times over yesterday and today, but I thank you so much once again for the kind words and the support. Turn off your gaslight. It helps us to keep this thing going in perpetuity. And so with that, let's answer that live chat question.
All right, so this one is sponsored by Turn Off Your Gaslight, and it goes to Anthony Riley, who says, wouldn't the destruction of the dam make that a WMD and therefore trigger NATO Article 5?
It would not, because the Novakakovka Dam is not a NATO piece of infrastructure. It's not on NATO land, and so I would say that a weapon of mass destruction probably wouldn't be used to destroy the dam. It would probably be destroyed through conventional means. A lot of dams historically have been destroyed through conventional bombing, and so the Russians would most likely just do that. It would destroy the dam, and it wouldn't use a weapon of mass destruction to invoke the United States getting involved. Excuse me, everyone. And it also wouldn't I guess you could say, be hitting anything that's owned by NATO, so it wouldn't invoke Article 5 there either. I wish it would, but sadly, due to the current premises and what we know, it wouldn't. But I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again, Turn Off Your Gaslight, for sponsoring that live chat. And also, that was a really good question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
In the Art of Falling Out, Windows will be in theaters very soon, but stand by. The production crew is wrapping up all the editing work, as you could say. But anyways, let's see here. Up next, we have a... Come on, spreadsheet. Don't do this to me now. Okay, so up next, we have a very generous $50 super chat from Magic Sky Girl, who says, on behalf of the entire LSA, we want you two to know how much we appreciate what you do and the hard work it takes to keep the things running. Slava Enforcers, Slava LSA, and Slava Ukraine. And thank you so much, Magic Sky Girl. That's so kind of you.
Thank you so much, Magic Sky Girl. You have been one of our hype girls, actually, not hype guys, hype girls ever since the very beginning of the stream. And I thank you so much for the amount of support that you've given us and how much you help us to keep this thing running. And also those incredibly kind words right there. It does take a decent amount of work to keep this thing rolling. Of course, the streams are 3.5 hours long. Some of the longest in terms of streams there are on the entirety of YouTube that normally run, which is kind of unbelievable to me that we do that every night. Also, the other thing is that the beforehand work that goes into this is quite lengthy. To give y'all a bit of like a timetable of how it works, about 20 to 30 minutes are spent on the thumbnail. Also, Matthew, we could run a poll. Ask everyone if they like tonight's version of the thumbnail, because I was trying something new, and I'll actually show it real quick. So, there's the current thumbnail I have. It says beginning of the end, and the beginning is in red, the of the is in white, and then the end is in red. We're probably not going to use those exact same kind of color fonts a lot, but I thought it was a little bit more interesting and eye-catching than our normal thumbnail, and so I was like, what if we give it a shot? We'll see if it does well, and if it doesn't, we'll go back to the old thumbnails. If it does well and people like it, we might try and keep these or do other variations of them. Also, you can see a little bit of what I watch. I watch a decent bit of British Path, also a lot of Tom Scott. I love Tom Scott, and a whole bunch of other things. I've never watched this guy right here, Gaming with a Colonel, but you know, he's a gaming channel, so that's pretty neat. Anyways, yeah, a whole bunch of different varied stuff, mostly governmental stuff. But anyways, moving back to this, if y'all do like that thumbnail, I hope y'all have. That takes about 20 to 30 minutes to make. Specifically tonight, it took more about like 40 minutes because I was trying to come up with a brand new design. Making the Morse code message is one of the simplest yet longest amounts of time that's taken up in making this stream every night. That Morse code message takes about 30 seconds to type, but about 10 to 20 minutes to put into the stream. It is an unbelievable amount of time, and sadly we missed it tonight because I forgot to put in the new intro card I made for it. So that 20 to 30 minutes to 20 to 10 minutes that I spent doing that tonight was completely wasted.
Enforcer, I was trying to play it off because I saw WF2U, CFA, and I think also Mark Hodges. They said the Morse code's the same as last night. And I said, yeah, that's right. We're just testing you guys. That's all.
Yeah, that was completely by mistake. I'm sorry about that. I would play the new Morse code, but we've gotten the ball rolling and you can't stop it now. But it's pretty funny that I screwed that up. This is the first time I ever did that tonight, too. But someone said, your live streams titles tend to be a little over the top, venturing into clickbait territory. I would say not. This is a true statement. Russia fires a British plane. They did. So, I mean, like, well, hang on. That's a comment I have seen a couple of times. I gotta go through and look at this. Russians panic, declare martial law. That's true. Ukrainian police shoot at drones. That's true. That's a video made by Matthew. It did pretty good, I gotta say. Hey. Ukraine rolls over Russian army. That's true. Massive push in Kherson. Russia flees. That was pretty true. Russia running out of missiles. That was true. Ukraine does the impossible. They did the first in history. I mean, like, all these titles, like, the titles are in all caps, so I guess that you could say that they look clickbaity, but we cover the exact thing that's in the title as soon as the stream starts. You know, and that's what gets me, is that for some reason people think these are clickbaity, but we literally cover what's on these titles first thing. You know, like, it's as soon as we get on stream, we're like, the reason for the title and the thumbnail tonight is because of this, and we'll go over exactly what we said was going to be in here on the thumbnail. It's It's just weird to me that people say that. Anyways, moving back to that, you can see how different that thumbnail is from the rest. And also, I hope that addresses that fairly well. But thank you so much once again for the kind words, Magic Sky Girl. We put in a decent amount of work and effort into trying to make sure that these streams are enjoyable, watchable, and look interesting to watch to your common person. And so with that, thank you so much once again for your support, and I'm glad that you've been enjoying the stream so much. I'm glad to also know that we've been able, speaking of the common person, that's one thing that Matthew and me emphasize a lot, is making sure that the information is simple enough that just people wandering into this category could understand it. And we sometimes don't do that. I sometimes get into the weeds, because some people ask for us to get into the weeds, but I gotta be honest, while I know a lot about history, I don't know a lot about the specifics of exact kinds of weapon systems and their capabilities, so that's why we pull up Wikipedia a lot. But with that, thank you so much once again, Magic Sky Girl, and I thank you so much for enjoying this channel and supporting us so much. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from William Allen, who says, just locking on to the plane shows hostile intent. During Operation Southern Watch, if an Iraqi plane did that, it would find its remains 6 feet under. Ops, Southern Watch historian. Woo!
And thank you so much for the support in bringing that up. If for an aircraft to fire a missile, it has to lock onto an aircraft and fire it. That's a deliberate act. It takes a few pushes of some buttons. Of course, you have to highlight the radar target. You then have to spool up the missile, and then you fire it. So it's a pretty labor-intensive process in terms of clicking buttons. It's a deliberate decision. And to think that they did that to an RAF plane, and the reason why they got away with it is because the British are thinking, this could start World War III. We don't want the whole entire Western world to go up in fire. That's the only reason why they are playing it down. At the same time, they're also playing it up by escorting their aircraft now with armed fighter aircraft. So with that in mind, I would have to say that would be entirely true. And if the Libyans did anything like that during the Gulf of Sidra incident, we would have shot them down, and we did. And so that kind of tells you how bad of a situation that really is, and how we're trying to downplay it to make sure that we don't enter the Third World War right away. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, and I thank you also for sharing that with us. That's a very true statement, and one to remember when talking about situations like that. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from none other than Psyops, who says, the rope is too good for Putin. He needs to get Gaddafi'd, a good old AK suppository.
I saw the guy, he shot the rifle from the library book, the suppository, or whatever they said about JFK. But moving on from that and into this joke, I would have to say that I would agree with that. I don't want to go into that too much because I don't know if YouTube draws the line even when we're talking about dictators, but I do agree with that. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, Psyops. And I would have to say, I want to add to your comments, but I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, man, what if YouTube's like, oh, so I thank you so much once again for the support. I would add to it on here if I could. So with that, thank you so much once again. And just know I do agree with you. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops, and being around forever.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Justice Ryan, who says, Enforcer, can the U.S. and NATO be allowed to destroy Iranian suicide drone shipments coming from Iran before they reach Crimea?
That's a tough one. And I would have to say the answer would most likely be no. To do that, let U.S. bases in Turkey. Turkey. Militarybases.com. We have 2 military bases in Turkey. Okay, that's good to know. Look, there's a C5. Wow. Anyways, here's the other one. Wow. So we do have 2 military bases in Turkey. What we could do, although this would most likely risk war, is because those drones are most likely being loaded onto a train or a plane from Iran and being flown out of the country into Russia. What you could do is you could send an aircraft from the airbase near Adana and fly it over to Iran and destroy that train or destroy the aircraft carrying those drones. Both of those are pretty much starting a war with Iran. The question being, is it worth starting a war with Iran for? In my best guess, I would say yes. But that is under certain contexts. We don't want to get stuck there for 10 to 20 years. That's one thing we already know. But one thing we do also want is that we don't want these weapons being shipped into Ukraine. And we can win a war. We can win a war by only losing 56 guys. And I know that losing one guy is a pretty sad thing, but if we look at the Gulf War, we were able to beat Saddam Hussein and his entire Iraqi army, and the coalition only took 292 casualties and inflicted 20 to 50,000 on the Iraqis. So we could win a war against a nation that is as equipped as Iran fairly easily with a very low amount of casualties. But our aims and goals for what would happen after we defeat them would have to be incredibly limited in scope and cause very small changes. Really making sure that the government that's kind of in charge right now stays in charge, or at least the one that comes into power is already in very high favor with the public, so that way we don't have to be involved in peacekeeping operations for the next 10 years in that country. So really, our only aim could be is to defeat them and force them into not sending more weapon shipments to Russia. So with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well. A pretty interesting one, but of course, it does involve pretty much all-out war if we were to try and stop those drone shipments, because there's really no other way for us to do it rather than direct military action. And so with that, I hope that does address the comment fairly well, and I thank you so much once again for the support and a very thought-provoking and interesting question. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and also, I'm going to go out of order just for a second because it looks like Duncan has to leave for the night, so I want to get to his super chat before he goes. He puts in an $18 donation, and I just read it just now, and it looks like he's really going to put me through the ringer tonight. So I shouldn't have skipped to it, but no, I'm just joking. He says, Baba Mu Ba. I can't say that, Duncan. He says, Igor at the firing range with Putler said, Baba meow meow, Ralph meow, moo ha 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 ha. Putler replied, ba 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 ba. I can't shoot, Baba meow meow, oink oink oink. Yeah, Ralph ba.
And I thank you for the support, WVR. And of course, you tortured Matthew again. How many days have you been tortured like that, Matthew? Like 100?
I can't even count anymore.
Yeah, thank you so much for Duncan, both for the support and also giving everyone on this stream a good laugh as Matthew reads those off. And of course, thank you so much once again for the support. And I don't know what was censored, but I would have to say that the soldier at the range with Putin should have tried to change his targets a little quickly. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and also, good night, Duncan VR. I saw as well that you had to get off here in a minute, and so we wanted to make sure to address yours next. And I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you have a good night's sleep, and that you're ready for the next day. And so with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $20 super chat from Chip Kerwan, who says, can air-to-air heat-seeking missile get shot as a warning shot by deprogramming, not seeking heat? Plus, Professor Clark's Sky News fact time line reported Tuesday might warrant suspicion missile is UK disinformation.
And I thank you for the support. I don't think the missile is UK disinformation. I believe that would be a pretty weird thing for them to declare misinformation that a missile just fell off of a Russian plane. It wouldn't really make a lot of sense for them to bring that up, and also for them to also go and then immediately try and dispel it by saying, oh, it's just a minor thing, it was no big deal, because why would they do that? It wouldn't really serve them any benefit. So that would be my standpoint on that being British misinformation. I don't believe it is at all. And also the other thing about that would be, can you reread that first part real quick to make sure I get it correct?
So the first part said, can air-to-air heat-seeking missile get shot as a warning shot by deprogramming the heat-seeking feature?
Now, I'm not a tech expert on air-to-air missiles, especially ones that are infrared and use heat to guide themselves to a target. So unfortunately, I could not tell you if one could or couldn't do that to a missile. I have a feeling that there would be a way. If there is a will, there is some kind of way to do that. But at the same time, that would be a waste of a good missile. And that jet could have gotten the exact same message across if it had just fired off its cannon to the side of the aircraft as a warning shot. So with that, I hope that does address the question fairly well in both regards. And I thank you so much once again for the support. And hopefully we got some of that correct. But take the second part with a grain of salt, because I'm not really sure how a infrared air-to-air missile would really work in that regard. But with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep running.
And up next, we have a $20 super chat from Wendy Pines, who says, on Monday here in Alaska, 2 Russian Tupolev Tu-95 Bear bomber planes were intercepted as they flew close to Alaska. Is this happening more since the Ukraine war? Also, Slava Ukraine, LSA pause up, RRR, cheese smile, cheese dynamic duo.
And I thank you so much for the support and the kind words as well. I think Matthew and me are a dynamic duo. We do quite well. Being a host and co-host, Matthew's become a skilled craftsman at managing everything on his end, and also throwing in a comment here and there on stream, which I've got to give him huge credit for. And also, the other thing I would like to throw in about that is the Tu-95s and Russian strategic bombers in general flying towards American airspace is not anything new. This actually has been happening ever since the beginning of the Cold War, and a little bit before that even. Well, not really. But ever since the beginning of the invention of radar, it has been happening. So I would have to say it's not too much of a big deal. We do that often to the Russians. You can see a lot of videos made by Russia of US B-52s getting close to Russian airspace, and that is something that we do as the United States, and something that the Russians also do, to probe response times and to see if a strategic bomber, if needed, could fly into the other country and do something like drop a nuclear bomb. That's the entire reason of flying those aircraft close to someone's airspace, is to see how fast their scramble time is. And so with that, I wouldn't consider it anything to be concerned about. It's really just normal military activity as far as the Russian Air Force and the U.S. Air Force is concerned. And so with that, I hope that addresses the comment fairly well. Of course, that is not going off of the frequency of it. That's just going off of the fact that that's been happening for a long time. We don't know if the number of times that this has happened has started to increase or decrease. All we know is that this is a common occurrence that's been going on for decades, as far as we know. You can even find pictures back from the 70s of U.S. jets intercepting Russian strategic bombers near Alaska. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support, and I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have another $20 super chat from Psyops, and of course I've got to scan the super chat real quick, make sure I'm not going to say anything out of line. Let's see here. He says, so when's the family reunion? You can't stay single forever. Muhahaha. Alabama boys. Muhahaha.
Oh, you see what he did there, Matthew?
No.
He had us. He says that the only way we're going to get a relationship is with a cousin.
How'd you get that out of that statement?
Well, you see, he said, when's the family reunion? You can't stay single forever.
Oh, Psyops, come on.
Psyops!
Come on, man.
Ah, man!
I didn't even catch that one, too.
Man.
I didn't detect it after Andrew said it.
We've been had. Matthew, we've been had. We have been had. But it's fine. That was a funny joke, a play on an old stereotype about Alabama. I'll have you know that that my wonderful wife, Cousin Elliot, wait a minute, hang on.
Don't say that. Don't say that.
Oh, man. Anyways, I was going to make a whole joke on that, but of course Matthew is going to censor me now, so I thank you so much once again for the support, Psyops, also for the joke as well. We don't date our cousins all the time in Alabama. It's just when we're lonely and you only got farmersonly.com. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for getting the whole entire live chat throwing out LOL at the same time. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right. And also, I see folks talking about my comment. I said I had a Toblerone bar over here on the side of my desk because somebody said they wanted a chocolate bar.
Did you?
I just keep do what?
Did you know? Speaking, you just made my head explode. Head explode, not explode. There is a Toblerone train in Switzerland.
No way.
Yes, the Toblerone train.
Look at that.
I'm just kidding.
Do you know in the Toblerone logo? Wait a minute, that's fake.
That one's fake. I'm trying to find the specific.
And for sure, how are you going to get me too? Psyops just got me.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to find the Toblerone train. I've seen it before. It's in Switzerland. Let me actually.
Did y'all know that in the logo for Toblerone, there's actually a bear in the side of the Matterhorn?
Really?
Yes.
I had no idea. That is nuts. Are you serious?
Yes.
Hang
Very
on.
serious.
Okay, so I can't find the Toblerone train, sadly. I've seen it before, though, on like a video of someone taking a ride through Switzerland. I was like, oh my god, it's a Toblerone train. Where is the bear?
It's right there in the middle.
Right here?
Yeah, that's the bear.
Oh! There's its snout, there's its ear, and there's its front legs, and there's its rear legs. That is genius. I have never spotted that before. That is freaking cool. You can see it better in this one. And you can also see it right there. They actually highlighted it right there.
Yes, that's like a cheat.
That is so cool.
Wait a minute. It says they took out the letters. They said Berun. Wait.
Bern,
Oh,
Switzerland. Bern, Switzerland.
That's what I said, Berun.
The flag of Bern. Let me show you that, Matthew. The flag of the canton of Bern. The bear is on the flag of the canton of Bern. And so that's what they did there, is that they highlighted the bear and they put down Bern because that is the bear that is on the flag of Bern.
Now it makes sense.
That makes sense, and that is cool. Let's pull that up. Let's see where Toblerone started, because someone's saying, like, it's Toblerone.
Probably Bern.
Probably. If it did, then that is a really cool... yep, it was a brand produced in Bern.
They probably still make it there, I think.
So it was introduced into production in 1908, 114 years ago. Right now, Mondelez International owns the company. But before that, it was Kraft Foods Incorporated.
That's a weird parent company for such a Swiss that type of company. I'm saying Swiss, but
yeah,
Switzerland.
It really is. Aren't they the ones? I can't say this because this is apparently a bad term now. But aren't they the one that also make those Central American sweet crackers? You know the ones I'm talking about. Don't say the name of it though, because we could get in massive trouble for that. But
Central American sweet crackers. I'm trying to figure out what that is.
Well, I guess we'll just forget about that. Some of y'all will probably say that in the live chat. Matthew will see it, maybe no, because we used to eat them. But apparently, Mondelez owns Belvita, Chips Ahoy, Oreo, Ritz, Tuck. I never heard of those. Triscuit, LU, sounds very appetizing. Let's see, Sour Patch Kids, Barney. It literally says, not to be confused with Barney the dinosaur. That's all it says. And Peak Friends, they also own chocolate brands Milka, Cote d'Or, hopefully I'm pronouncing that correct, Toblerone, Cadbury, Green and Blacks, Freya, Marabou, Fries, and Lacta, gum and cough brands Trident, Dentyne, Chiclets, Halls and Stride, as well as Tate's Bake Shop cookies and powdered beverage brand Tang. Wow, they actually have a massive portfolio of crap they own. Gosh, that's actually a lot. Anyways, with that, it's interesting to know a little bit more about the Toblerone company, and also we can see the Matterhorn, which is a part of their logo. Also a very famous mountain in Switzerland, and a ride at Disneyland. And so with that, we are now on to the next question. But I thank you so much once again. Wait a minute, were we even on a question there?
I don't think so.
I don't think we were. And so with that, we were on to the next question.
All right. So next up, we have a $20 super chat from Blue Flam 777, who says, "I'm going to be." Wait a minute. I think that super chat got to put in with somebody else's. Hold on just a second. Let me check something. Let's see here. I could have sworn this was with somebody else's.
You could have sworn? Are you sure?
I could have sworn, but Blue Flam, I'm not seeing it anywhere else. So let me know if this is what you actually said or not. But Blue Flam puts in a $20 super chat and says, "I'm going to be a dad very soon. If time allows, please pick a question from the live chat."
Hey, and if that is the correct comment to the super chat, congratulations, Blue Flam, on becoming a dad. Hopefully that is what you wanted, and of course, I hope you have a fun time raising the kid. Of course, I've heard a lot about.
And Enforcer, that is not his super chat. Actually, let's see. Somehow it got duplicated with Spam Hoffman's super chat. I don't know how that happened.
Shame.
So So Blue Flame, I'm not sure if that was sent in without a donation and my spreadsheet somehow duplicated it somehow. But if you asked a question, I hate to ask, but please send it again because something has happened with the spreadsheet. But he did put in a $20 donation, and thank you very much for the support.
And thank you so much for the support, Blue Flame 777. If you did have a question attached to that, please send it in. Or if you want to ask a question, send it in, and we'll make sure to answer it because we messed up right there. And so with that, we were on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
All right. And up next, we have a $15 super chat from Eli Lassetti, who says, what do you think of the YF-23? Did they ever make them in numbers?
Now, the YF-23... YF-23. They never made them in numbers, but they did make enough of them to decide to cancel them. They made 2 of them, and here's one of them right there. A really odd, funky-looking aircraft, but it was really neat. And a lot of its design principles would go into making the F-22. This thing was produced from 1989 to 1990, which gives you an idea that stealth technology was really starting to bloom and blossom at that point then. And so imagine what the military could probably be working on right now that we don't really know about much. But still, moving on from that, it's a really neat aircraft. They only made 2 of them. And that's about all I know about it. There's not a lot on this aircraft. It will probably be interesting to make a video on. And there's the rear of the YF-23. Apparently this one is now on display, if I'm correct. Let's see. Also, there's the 2 different camouflage types. This one's the one that's used on the F-22 now. And also that one's used on the F-22 now. So we'll just move on from that comment. And we can also see the prototype YF-22 right there and the YF-23 over there. Honestly, I have to say, I think the F-22 looks better.
I think so.
Yeah, to me, it's just more sleek, has better lines. I like it. It looks a lot more streamlined. But still, really interesting aircraft. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the question fairly well. I don't know a lot about the YF-23. I do know about its existence and how odd of an aircraft it is, but it still was not the weirdest thing that came out of the stealth program. There was a lot weirder looking aircraft and uglier ones that came out of that program. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope we were able to address that question fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support. And, of course, helping this channel to keep running.
Yes, indeed. And up next, we have a $15 super chat from Cindy Mitchell, who says, when the pipes were played during the Great Wars 1 and 2, the Germans would freak. Why?
And can you reread that one again? Because I heard pipes, and I think I heard that wrong.
When the pipes were played during the Great Wars 1 and 2, the Germans would freak. Why?
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I heard that correctly the first time. I took it entirely out of context. I thought you were talking about playing oil pipes. And I was like, how do you play oil pipes? But now that I know you're talking about the bagpipes, the reason why the Germans were incredibly scared of the bagpipes in the First World War is because only 2 groups of soldiers would play them. It was either the Scottish infantry, or it was the Canadians, which have a lot of Scottish heritage. Either of those, believe it or not, a lot of people think that the Canadians are a peaceful people, but I believe they are probably the most violent and savage people on Earth. They just have a great way of quelling it a lot, because whenever you look at their military history, they have been undefeated in war yet, believe it or not. I'm waiting for Matthew to say I don't believe it, but we'll move on from that.
I cannot believe that.
I cannot believe it's not butter. And so moving on from that, in the First World War, if you heard bagpipes, it was either the Canadians or it was the Scottish. Both of these groups of infantry had high amounts of morale and esprit de corps and would just charge straight into a trench, really without question, and it was going to be a very long, drawn-out battle for the trench that they were trying to hold. And so that's the reason why, for the large part, the Germans were scared of the bagpipes in the First World War. It was really just more so the bagpipes being associated with the ferocity of the soldiers that followed the sound. And so with that, and Sax 2 said they sound bloody painful. Sax 2, don't you dare. The bagpipes are a fine sounding instrument. I love them. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and the question. Hopefully I was able to get that one fairly correct. It could have been other reasons, like, you know, the bagpipes are kind of loud, and that may have scared him as well. I'm just kidding. But with that, we're on to the next one. Thank you so much once again.
And also, real quick, it looks like 78% said they liked the new thumbnail format, and 22% said they did not. And that is the results from the poll.
Also, a lot of people did like it more. That is cool. So with that, we might try and keep that one going, but I don't know. We might flip around in between them and try and keep things interesting and keep it a little bit more varied. Because I was looking at the old thumbnail format, and we've had that exact same format for 239 days. Like, we've had it ever since the first day of the war, and so we're going to see about trying to change it into something that's a little bit more interesting looking. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again, everyone, for voting that you like the new thumbnail. And with that, on to the next one.
All right, and just a heads up to everyone, we have about 30 super chats until we get to our live chat questions. So up next, we have a $10 super chat from Blue Flam 777 once again, who says, "For the anthem, Slava Ukraine."
And thank you so much for the support. And of course, it is for the anthem, but sadly, I can't find a way to get the license for that version of the anthem. And I think it would be quite difficult as well, considering that they are currently in a war. And so I don't know if it would be easy to do that, but I thank you so much once again for the support. And we will see about trying to keep that anthem in or finding a very suitable replacement worth replacing it. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Blue Flame 777. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from KG, who says, "I think Russia and China are about to open two fronts. They may be the new Axis powers. They're definitely in cahoots with both nuclear powers. Makes sense to take pressure from USA off of Russia."
And I thank you so much for the support. And I don't think the Chinese will be invading Taiwan anytime soon. And there's a load of reasons why. I would love to go into them, but due to time reasons, considering we have 30 super chats left and it's already gone on very long tonight, which it didn't feel like that until Matthew told me that we had 30 left. I thank you so much for the support, but I don't think that the Chinese will be invading Taiwan just due to the logistical difficulties of supporting a small naval invasion force all the way from China without it taking heavy casualties from anti-ship missiles, considering that the Taiwanese have a massive inventory of them. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Sean Collins, who says, "Be kind, please rewind. Thanks for the deep, deep dives."
And thank you so much for enjoying the deep dives. I try my best to limit them wherever I can. I know a lot of people enjoy them. I've also seen a decent amount of people say that they don't like them, but apparently that's a very small amount of people. Apparently that is the thing that is liked amongst everyone on this channel, and so I will make sure to keep the deep dives around. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. And also I saw that kind of come the catchphrase in the live chat where everyone was like, "Be kind, please rewind," and I will make sure that we pause and rewind as much as we want, so that way we can piss off everyone. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Mamba Mentality, who says, "Hey Enforcer, want you to check Nikai Proshin, YouTuber, latest video timestamp 540. He addresses something interesting on mobilization. It isn't over. Matter of fact, they found another. Found it very interesting."
And I thank you so much for the support, and I will go and try and check out that YouTube channel and their video, but sadly, due to a lot of things going on in the background right now, like our special moving operation, it's going to be very hard to get around to that in a decent amount of time right now. But I do thank you so much for the support, and I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Eric Gol-Seth, who says, "Putin's grouping is as good as Kim Jong-il's golf score."
Oh my god, that's a roast.
That's a roast.
That is a roast. And I thank you so much for the support. And of course, I thank you for that sick roast right there. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again.
And next up, we have a $10 super chat from Craig Platel, who says, "You need to check geographics limits for NATO, Black Sea, maybe not included for the Russian missile launch. Black Sea might not be covered by NATO. Believe it or not, Hawaii is not covered by NATO."
Huh. Well, it is not in the North Atlantic. But let's go back and check NATO Article 6. The cooler article, because it gives Article 5 its meaning. Article 6. let's see here. For the purpose of Article 5, an armed attack on one or more of the parties is deemed to include an armed attack on the territory of any of the parties in Europe or North America, on the Algerian Department of France, and on the territory of Turkey, or on the islands under the jurisdiction. That was supposed to be a JFK voice. That's terrible. I'm going to stop. On the territory of Turkey, or on the islands under the jurisdiction of any of the parties in the North Atlantic area, north of the Tropic of Cancer, or on the forces, vessels, or aircraft on any of the parties when in or over these territories, or any other area in Europe in which occupation forces of any of the parties were stationed on the date when the treaty entered into force, or the Mediterranean Sea, or the North Atlantic area north of the Tropic of Cancer. So it does appear, as a matter of fact, that I'm trying to read that a little bit more. It does appear to be the case that that does not extend into the Black Sea. Still, I think that if a British aircraft was shot down, that would probably invoke NATO's Article 5 anyways, because it would be an attack upon their military, an attack upon one of their nations. So, I don't know. The text is pretty clear that the Black Sea doesn't cover forces there. But I feel like they would probably try and make... Well, I feel like they might not make an exception, especially with what the British said today. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. Thank you for bringing that up, and thank you for letting us reread that so that way we can see that that is the case. The Black Sea is not covered in the article. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from William Allen, who says, really? Bagpipes have more range than the Minuteman III nuclear missile? What?
And I thank you so much for the support. And the bagpipes don't have that kind of range. While they're deadly loud, they dissipate very quickly. You can't hear bagpipes too far away. You have to be kind of close to hear them, although they get incredibly loud once you get that close. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. And also a pretty good joke. And with that, we are on to the next one. Of course, before we start talking about Minuteman III ICBMs, and I think nukes are one of Matthew's favorite topics because, oh, nani? And so with that, we're on to the next one. And thank you once again.
Yes, and thank you very much, William, for the support. Up next, we have a $10 super chat from Jay Bagwell, who says, thanks for the shout-out. Assuming the dam is destroyed, it will flood the nuclear plant and create a Fukushima-type disaster.
And I thank you for the support, but I think geography may be mixed a little there. The Novakakovka Dam is down here, and the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is up here. And so while there would probably be an incredibly fast current through this reservoir as the water empties out down here, there wouldn't be anything that would happen to the plant where it would get flooded. In fact, it would be losing a lot of its water, which it uses to cool the nuclear reactors, which could be detrimental because then it runs out of coolant, which could be, suffice it to say, catastrophic. And so with that, I thank you for the support and also bringing that up, because that actually allowed me to think real quick about that, because it's surrounded by water for a reason. And if the water disappears, the nuclear reactors will most likely have a meltdown because there will be no more coolant to control the reaction. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support, and also a pretty interesting comment. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $10 super chat from Spam Hoffman, who says, I'm going to be a dad very soon. If time allows, please pick a question from the live chat. And Spam Hoffman, you are the father.
And he is going to become the father. Luke, don't you turn your back on me. I will, father. Wait a minute, I just screwed that all up. Anyways, I thank you so much for the support once again, Hoffman. And also, congratulations on becoming a dad. That is a huge deal. Of course, I hope that you have a fun time raising your kid. I've heard that it's a terrible thing at the very start, and I've heard it's a great thing once they start to grow up and you watch them develop and succeed and achieve things and all kinds of stuff. And so I'm very proud of you, and congratulations on that. And I'm sure a lot of people in the Lee Spring Army are incredibly proud of that, and we all wish you the best of luck in the future. And because of that, we are going to make sure to answer a live chat in your honor. And so, what live chat do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the live chat that is going to get answered in honor of Spam Hoffman is from David Prange, who says, do you think the Russians will help Iran make a nuke as payment for the drones?
I don't think so. The drones are not that valuable to the Russians, and that would take a lot of effort from Russia's part. I don't see it happening. But then again, I could be wrong. I just feel, though, on the surface, that it would not make a lot of sense for the Iranians to send them a couple of drones that use a 2-stroke moped motor, and in return, the Russians help them to build a weapon of mass destruction. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Sausage Gravy Biscuit, who says, Slava Ukraine, stop listening to the whiny feedback about the streams. They are awesome.
And thank you so much for the support and the kind words as well. One thing that is always hard to think about, of course, when you're not in this position, is how much like criticism like kind of means. Sometimes like when people just come through and they go, oh, you're a grifter or something like that, it doesn't matter. Like, who cares? You know, you're in and out. But when someone comes through and sits there and says something like, I love your channel, but for the love of God, can you stop rewinding videos and pausing them? And you see that like 30 times, you're like, man, is that really getting on people's nerves that bad? And, you know, and then it starts to weigh on you a little bit. I thank everyone so much for letting me know that it doesn't weigh on anyone, and a lot of people actually enjoy it. But, you know, I always sit there and think about it, and it weighs on me a little bit. I'm like, maybe I ought to go change that part of our stream and see if it does better, if it does worse. And it looks like a lot of people actually enjoy that, so we will keep it around. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I thank you for enjoying our being kind and please rewinding. And with that, thank you so much once again for supporting this channel, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from CMV2, who says, from the drunk Geordie, keep it up, lads. A love from the UK.
Hey, it's a drunk Geordie. He's from here. Around here, at least. And so that means he's on the border. Let's see. Yes, I forgot. Y'all re-changed the border. It's not on Hadrian's Wall anymore, is it? Nope, it's not. It's not. It's just on this giant forest that shows exactly where the border is, and then it follows a creek. Where in the world is Hadrian's Wall? It was like, hang on. It's somewhere around here. I want to find it on my own. The Coop House. Also, look, there's a British Army base right there. Quince Hill. What's this? Oh, I believe this is the Quince Hill disaster, where there was a massive train crash and a whole bunch of people were killed. And
Enforcer, we have 20 more super chats to go.
Right. Yep, I forgot. Yep, but that's where it happened, Quince Hill. Anyways, I can't find Hadrian's Wall, but I do thank you for the support, yeah, drunken Jardy. And with that, we are moving on to the next one, and thank you so much once again for the support and the kind words.
All right, and up next, we have a $10 super chat from Susie Q, who says, I heard Russia might evacuate civilians, then retreat, then Ukrainian soldiers move in and take Kherson, then orcs blow the dam, since losing probably Crimea too, which would flood the soldiers, ruin water supply.
And I thank you for the support, and that may be what the Russians are planning on doing, but I also feel like the Ukrainians would be smarter than that, and they would probably delay sending soldiers into Kherson, or send in a very small amount, so that way if something like that did happen, they wouldn't be losing a large amount of their forces at a very quick moment in time. Also, everyone, real quick correction, Geordies aren't actually from the border. I believe those are Scousers. I believe everyone's saying that the Geordies are from Newcastle, and so I'm sorry about that, everyone. I actually got the location of the Geordies wrong. For that reason, we will take a moment, Matthew. I know we have 20 of them left, but we will drop down into the town of Newcastle to take a look at it. Oh, wow, this is nice. Look at that. I like it. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support, yeah, Drunken Jordy, and I hope you've enjoyed us taking a look at your town of Newcastle upon Tyne. What in the world is this?
Oh, yikes.
Victorian, the Victorian homes. These are not Victorian homes, but this is something. So with that, I thank you so much once again. Is there a lot of these? Hang on, I gotta go around now. I'm curious.
And also, Enforcer, Scousers are from Liverpool, by the way.
Am I getting them all wrong? Oh my god. Hang on. What in the... Okay. My British viewers, please help me out, because now I'm getting everything wrong. I'm getting it all messed up. My synapses aren't firing. I'm forgetting everything about the United Kingdom. Who are the people that live on the border? What are they, terriers? Like, I got that probably wrong too. British slang terms for areas. Those are not it. We'll just move on. I'm from Durham. Seaham V2 says, I'm from Durham. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. I'm sorry, everyone. I'm sorry to all my British viewers. I'm messing up terribly tonight. The Scousers are from Liverpool, and I just remembered that once you said that, I was like, oh my god, we went there, and they, like they called themselves Scousers. Anyways, with that, we're on to the next one. I'm sorry to all my British viewers.
And up next, we have an $8 super chat from Ellis Hartman, who says, Hey Enforcer, thank you for the content and Slava Ukraine. Do you think there is anything NATO or the US can do to stop Iran's involvement in the war?
We could try and destroy their supply line to the Russians. That is one way, but we would also get involved in a war directly with them. And I think that's really the only way we can stop them, because diplomacy won't work. We're already on very unfriendly, almost hostile terms with them. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And also, thank you so much for supporting this channel and helping us to keep the thing running. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again for your kind words.
And up next, we have a $7 super chat from Cindy Mitchell, who says, Have the pipes struck fear in past history?
The pipes have struck fear in prior history, all throughout it. For example, on the fields of Waterloo, the Scots, let me make sure I get this correct. I believe it was the 42nd Regiment of Foot, the Black Watch, used pipes on the field, and they became quite a famous symbol at that point, as well as the uniforms of the soldiers of the Black Watch. They actually didn't have the large ostrich feather helmets at that point. Those would come around in the 1850s and the 1840s before the Crimean War. At that point, they were using a totally different headwear. I forgot the exact name of it, though. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And it looks like we got some bagpipe fans and some bagpipe haters. And of course, with bagpipes, you either love them or you hate them. And I've seen it's a pretty evenly mixed crowd with that. A lot of people hate them and a lot of people love them. And so with that, I hope that addresses the comment fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat, actually a $10 super chat from Holy DCE, who says, How many times is NATO really pulling Article 5 meme, trying not to go to war? And also, fun fact, Article 5 does not apply to Spain's territories in Morocco, as it's not in Europe.
And I thank you for the support. It did apply to France's territorial holdings in Algeria at the time, which is very weird. And it's kind of odd that it doesn't apply to Morocco. But it is the North Atlantic, and really everything north of the Tropic of Cancer is in the North Atlantic. So I guess you could say that it does, or it doesn't. Maybe I'm not understanding that correctly. Also, look, man, it's Casablanca. It's the town that movie was named after in 1942.
Really?
Yeah, that's Casablanca.
Wow.
That's cool. Anyways, getting back to what you said, I would not know the specific details of the treaty. That is probably true. I'll actually take your word for that one. It seems like it would be somewhat reasonable to assume. And it's kind of weird that it did extend, though, for the territorial holdings in Algeria. But with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And an interesting little fun fact about the treaty. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and clarifying that for us real quick.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Von Dalen, who says, Use dark mode in browser because it's much more comfortable as a viewer.
And I thank you for the support. But I'm going to not do that because I don't like dark mode. I like the bright mode. What do you think, Matthew? Dark mode or bright mode?
I like the light mode personally.
I like the light mode. I'm just not really a big fan of the dark mode. It's just never really caught on with me. And also, I know that once I do that, everyone will be like, oh, it's fine with light mode. So with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Anthony Bestwick, who says, instead of using 100,000 missiles to hit a $20,000 drone, maybe UK should remake the good old Spitfire Mark 9 to intercept them worked on V1.
And I thank you for the support, and it's a pretty interesting idea, but if you're talking about using a Spitfire Mark 9 to intercept a Shahed 136 and tip it off of its course, that would not work, because it is actually being guided by a pilot. There's a guy with a camera that's attached to that drone, and he's in a building hundreds of miles away, and he's actually guiding it with a joystick. So you could try and tip it over, but this guy would probably just adjust. He would probably, like, pull right or left on the stick to level it off again, and it would just keep going. You would have to shoot the thing down, and that would even be tough then. Honestly, at that point, why not just provide them with Super Tucanos and let them do the job? And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. Really interesting idea, though. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again for the support.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Packrat, who says, this is from the Packrat family for all the amazing work you do, and thank you guys. And Packrat, you didn't have to throw in support, man. We appreciate the whole family being here, and we love y'all being a viewer. And we also appreciate the support, but you didn't have to do that, man. But thank you so much.
And I got to thank you so much for the support as well, Packrat. And it's good to know that the whole Packrat family is here. Y'all are really packing in them rats, and that whole family's here. And so that... I thank you so much for the support, Packrat. You didn't have to throw in a super chat like Matthew said, but of course, it means a lot to us, especially now, that we get support, because it's going to help us out definitely here very soon. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And once again, a huge shout out to the Packrat family. Every single one of y'all is here right now, and I thank y'all so much for enjoying the stream and watching it like y'all do. And with that, we are on to the next one, and thank you once again.
And up next, we have a $5 super chat from JC Atkins, who says, Enforcer Matt, see my previous question, please. And sadly, JC, I'm not sure which question you are referring to. I don't think I have it in the spreadsheet up here. But thank you very much for the support. And if you'd like to put that question in the live chat, I can be sure to read it off before the stream ends. But thank you very much for that. Up next, we have a $5 super chat from Marcus Burtonshaw, who says, what are your thoughts on the deployment of the USS West Virginia?
The USS West Virginia. Very interesting to name ships after landlocked states. But, you know, it is what it is. I don't think this thing's going to be doing well because it's a Colorado-class battleship. I think these things are... I'm just kidding, y'all. It's a submarine. We're going to go to the submarine real quick, if we can find it. USS West Virginia makes a rare appearance in the Arabian Sea. Arabian Sea. Right here. Down around India and Pakistan and Iran. That's scary. Let's go to Navy.mil. And this is America's Navy. On the 20th of October, the commander of CENTCOM conducted a visit aboard the USS West Virginia, a U.S. Navy Ohio-class nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarine at an undisclosed location at sea in international waters in the Arabian Sea. Carrillo was joined on the USS West Virginia by Vice Admiral Brad Cooper, commander of the U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet, and NAVCEN. During his visit on board the submarine, General Carrillo received a hands-on demonstration of the capabilities of the vessel, which operates globally under U.S. Strategic Command. I was thoroughly impressed with the crew of the USS West Virginia. These sailors represent the high level of professionalism, expertise, and discipline across the U.S. military, said Carrillo. These submarines are the crown jewel of the nuclear triad, and the West Virginia demonstrates the flexibility, survivability, readiness, and capability of U.S. CENTCOM and U.S. STRATCOM forces at sea. Well, it looks like there were some glowing remarks about the West Virginia. I believe it's probably on a normal routine patrol. One does always have to remember that the U.S. Navy is everywhere at all times, and it sees everything going on at any given place. And so I think it's just on a routine patrol, which requires it to be in the Arabian Sea. Wouldn't really consider it out of the norm. U.S. submarines are everywhere, even places the Russians don't like the Barents Sea. They're always there. And so with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
All right. And up next, we have a $5 super chat from Yuri Bench, who says, will the Russians destroy the Novakovka Dam after they are expelled from Kherson?
I believe they most likely won't. It depends. It depends. If they evacuate all the civilians and there's no way that they can be made out to be some kind of atrocious criminals, undeniably atrocious criminals even to their own people, then yes, they probably would. But if there's still a lot of people there, probably that's even a tough one to say because they've shown no regard for civilians. I really don't know. I feel like they wouldn't, I feel like it wouldn't be a smart move because the Ukrainians already won't cross the Dnipro River. It's just too wide. And considering that the Russians would be right on the other side and there are no bridge crossings, it would be really hard for them to pull off. So I don't see them doing that because the goal would be to divide the Russians from the Ukrainians heavily, and the Dnipro River already serves that purpose. So I don't know. I'm going to have to remain undecided on that one until I can get some clearer indicators that they either would or wouldn't. And so with that, I thank you for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
All right, and up next, we have a $5 super chat from Smart Lucker, who says, I heard something about musicians and Ukraine anthem. I got 10 years experience with music. I would like to help in this fashion if possible. Poland Fund.
And thank you so much for the support. We've got the Poland Fund here tonight. And of course, I thank you so much for the offer of help. We are trying our best behind the scenes to keep everything running and, of course, to try and work on that. But we'll see. And if we do need the help, we will call on you. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support and also offering the support as well.
And also, real quick, I did see Tracy Mitchell's super chat come in for $2. She said, Enforcer Matt, you gave up your bro's name. Well, actually, Tracy, most of the people on the channel already know the Enforcer's real name, but yeah, I did say it anyway. But the Enforcer gives my name up every day. He says Enforcer Matt.
And also Matthew.
Yes, and also Matthew, too. But yeah, that's also the Enforcer and also Andrew, but many people already know that anyway.
Yeah, it's just that if you ever noticed, Andrew doesn't really stick because the Enforcer has pretty much become like my name at this point. It's really weird. Like even when I go anywhere in person, like and people know me, they're like, "Oh, the Enforcer," and it's really weird. But at the same time, it's just accepted it as my fate. And also, the Enforcer is like the person I am pretty much on stream. It's like my stage name, my pin name, so I just still go by that, although I am Andrew. So with that, I thank you for bringing that up, Tracy. I hope that does address the comment. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support.
Yes, indeed. And up next, big shout out to Edgy Number 1 for putting in a $5 donation. And they say, check out the Ukrainian Army Chief of Staff version of Oh, in the Meadow Red Viburnum. It rocks. That's your new title tune, Ukraine's original anthem.
Hey, well, I thank you for the support. Interesting idea. I'll have to see if I can get a copyright-free version of it. But of course, I don't know if there is one. It still sounds really cool, though, and I will check it out and see if that is a possibility. Right now, we are actually going to be using the song Pour In Brothers Crystal Bowls, which sounds like a really weird title, but it's a really hyped-up song, and I like it. So with that, I hope that addresses the comment fairly well. And thank you so much for the support and the suggestion as well. It sounds like a good one.
Yes, indeed. And up next, a big shout-out to Junebug72, Callie J, Von Dalen, and Chronically for each putting in a $2 and a $4 super chat. We do appreciate the support very much from all four of you, and thank you for helping to keep us running, as always. But up next, we have a super chat from Edgy Number 1, once again, who puts in a $2 super chat, and says, when will Raytheon make Stinger 2 man pads?
I have no idea. I hate to
that
tell
would be
you.
top secret, my
yeah,
boy.
I think that would be top secret. And so with that, I thank you so much for the support. Sadly, I don't know that much. I'm not an all like my haters will say that I'm an all-knowing something, but I don't know everything, and I don't know anything about that one. And so with that, I thank you so much once again for the support, but sadly, I'm going to declare ignorance on that one because I'd have no idea. And with that, we're on to the next one. Thank you once again for the support, and also a pretty interesting question, but sadly, that's out of my league. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a $2 super chat from Smart Lucker, who says, on second thought, I want you to play the anthem. Andrew.
And thank you for the support, and I will see about trying to play the anthem. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and the suggestion. And with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you once again.
Also, shout out to Delper Bob for putting in a $2 super chat and leaving the little super sticker of the somewhat coy-looking pear thing. But thank you very much for the support. Man, isn't it just coy-looking?
Man, that pear is in there going...
it's literally like emoting, like tee.
Yeah, when you Stugna a Russian tank. Tee. But with that, I thank you so much for the support, Depper Bob, and also something for us to make fun of right there, which is that very shy pair. And so with that, we are on to the next one. And thank you so much once again for the support, Depper Bob.
Yes, indeed. And also, for our last super chat of the night till we get to our live chat questions, we have a $2 donation from Ack0, who says, as a father of 2-year-old and 1-week-old, I say, I'm back.
Hey, welcome back. And it's, of course, good to have you back. And I thank you so much for supporting this channel and also being back. I hope you sit back, relax, and enjoy these streams as we continue to cover the news and the questions every single day. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support. I hope that does address the comment fairly well. And that was our last super chat of the night. And so we are going to be answering live chat questions for the next 10 minutes. And then we'll be rounding out tonight's stream. And so we're going to try and answer as many of them as we can. So keep in mind the answers will be a little bit shorter because I want to make sure to try and answer as many as we possibly can. And so with that, what do we got?
All right, so up first, we have a question from Richie MC, who says, the U.S. is the beneficiary of the war, so it's hardly interested in ending it quickly. That was the quote from the head of a government-funded institute of Hungary. Is NATO fracturing? And real quick, Enforcer, before you answer that question, I actually had to write a couple of papers about that in one of my classes because I've been assigned the country of Hungary, and it looks like Hungary is having some internal issues in their government with the leader of the country. He's kind of like off the rails a little bit, but I'm not trying to get too political on that. But it looks like the guy might be pro-Putin, at least indirectly. And some of his members of government are deciding to speak out and make statements like that aren't very good, especially while they're aligned with the EU and NATO. But Enforcer, what do you think?
There is no fracturing in NATO. Hungary is a bit of an exception, but I wouldn't really consider it to be too much because Hungary understands that rocking that boat, the very comfortable and cushy boat that they're in right now, is not really a smart idea. So while they'll say a couple of things like that, that's not going to go too far. Because on top of that, Hungary is geographically isolated from any nation that would side with their plight. So they most likely won't be heading in that direction. It's still a stupid comment because we don't really benefit from the war. We actually are coughing up a decent amount of money to make sure that the Ukrainians can win this war. And while I think that a lot of people don't get that doesn't really benefit the United States because those are weapons that we're sending overseas, not in the U.S. military stockpiles, to be used by a foreign country in the benefits of our interests. So in the end, the interests are to our benefit, but not necessarily prolonging the war. That's also a major pro-Putin, pro-Russian rhetoric that they throw around to make people get discouraged to continue supporting the war. So I think it's largely just a misinformed comment. There's no fracturing in NATO going on amongst the rest of the nations involved. We've seen that the French, the Germans, the Poles, the British, the Spanish, the Italians, all of them have been united in their calls and their efforts in supporting Ukraine along with America. I think Hungary is the only exception there. Also, Matthew, since you've been writing a paper on Hungary, did you know that Hungary has one of the most beautiful parliament buildings in the world?
I did, actually, because I had to write a paper about that, too, as well.
And it's really nice.
I've had to write about a lot of stuff in Hungary.
Like, just look at that. That's beautiful.
It is nice, but they've definitely got some problems going on over there right now.
Oh, they certainly do have issues, that's for sure. And sadly, we can't get into them because, of course, it starts to weigh in on politics, and you have to start saying things in certain ways because it's just how it is. But so we don't want to get into the politics of it all. But with that, I hope that addresses that, and we're on to the next one.
And also, Rob said, ever tried Toblerone Jumbo? I didn't know there was a big version of a Toblerone bar, but I'll have to look into that because I need all the Toblerone I can get. But anyways, up next,
God! Look at how big it is!
4.5 kilograms.
Look at this one! Oh my God! Dude, that's a whole pecan right there!
Yes.
Jeez! Look at that! Oh my God! Yeah, we'll have to go and try and see if we can get one of those, but I don't know.
Wait a minute, has he got the ruler out?
Yeah, he's got the ruler out. He's got the tin foil. I mean, it's got everything. But with that, I hope we've addressed that real quick. That's crazy. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Victor Maldonado, who says, is Russia planning on blowing up the dam?
From what I can tell, Maybe, but I feel like they wouldn't because it would not really end up being beneficial for them. And so with that, we're on to the next one. I hope I answered that fairly well.
And up next, we have a question from Barb, who says, why hasn't the U.S. not yet offered Ukraine equipment to make their skies safer?
And they're speaking about Israel?
U.S.
Oh, U.S. We've provided them NASAMS, and we're also thinking about providing them Patriots, although there's been a bit of waffling involved with that. When we are providing them with an additional 4 NASAMS on top of the 2 that have already been in Ukraine for a little while now. And so with that, I hope that addresses the question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from Kantai Ludan, who says, do you think the toilet museum in Kyiv is the actual reason that Putin actually invaded?
And it probably could have been, but of course, we never want to make a specific statement on that. And so with that, I hope that addresses that comment fairly well. And we're on to the next one. Also, Matthew, Ezo448 said, what's the Aussie equivalent of an American paper? A 200-word essay? LOL. I'm going to tell you, man, like, one thing that's interesting to me is that you kind of build up the endurance over time, but in college, I've been writing, like, 10-page papers, and those are being considered short papers at this point. And I remember back in the day when a 5-page paper was considered long for a specific project. Now you're doing the thesis with a 10-page essay. You know, it's like, it's not double spaced, it's single spaced. You got to have citations for everything. But I mean, like, if Australians are only having to do 200-word essays, I would prefer to go to Australia and write essays there. It just seems easier. And so with that,
that's the length of a discussion post for us.
Yeah, it is. It's like the length of a minimum discussion post. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and up next we have a question from Book Bandit, who says, have you heard about the plan to blow up the power plant at Kakhovka and flood the area downstream?
I have heard about the plan to blow up the Novokakhovka power plant. I think that's one of our most asked questions tonight. I just don't know if it will happen or not. And so with that, I hope that addresses the question fairly well, and we are on to the next one.
And next up, we have a question from Luxer, who says, being in the industry, I can tell you that you can intercept a GPS signal and change things live. Why do you think this has not been implemented against the Iranian drones?
That is a great question, and I honestly could not give you an answer why. I believe that would be well beyond my technological expertise on what I know about those kinds of aircraft and drones and GPS systems, and so I'm going to have to declare ignorance on that one, but we are on to the next one.
And up next, we have a question from John Riley, who says, is it possible to tell if a missile launch is conventional or nuclear?
A missile launch is conventional or nuclear. That's a tough one. I
don't think so, because I think it'd be detected as a normal launch, and they couldn't tell what kind of warhead it has on it.
Usually conventional missiles are something similar to a cruise missile, so they only reach a certain altitude and therefore a certain trajectory. A nuclear missile, most likely like an intercontinental ballistic missile targeted at the United States, would have a very steep trajectory as it would be escaping the atmosphere, going almost into a suborbital path and then re-entering the atmosphere over the United States. So I think that would most likely be the best way to identify a conventional versus a nuclear missile is what kind of trajectory and flight path it's taking, and that will give you a good idea of what it really can be. But once again, take that with a grain of salt. And so with that, we are on to the next one. Actually, I believe this will be the third to last question of the night.
All right, and that question goes to Santiago Flores, who says, there was a news report that an Su-57 was used to shoot down a Ukrainian aircraft trying to knock out a kamikaze drone. Is it true?
Probably not. There's only 4 operational Su-57s in the entirety of the Russian Federation. All of those are still in the prototype phase, and they're trying to get all of the problems, I guess you could say, hammered out in them. And so there would be no way, unless if we had video and picture evidence, to ever prove that that happened. And so with that, I hope that answers the question. We are on to the second to last one of the night.
And also, thank you, Dubsy Dabster, for the $2 donation as well in the live chat. Thank you for your support. Also, up next, we have a question from Justin Nourse, who says, Enforcer, did Putin's martial law declaration give all the regional governors the power they need to conscript in the areas, the occupied areas, for the war and force Ukrainians to fight Ukrainians?
Sadly, I don't know the answer to that question. That may be one of the reasons why martial law was declared, but at the same time, we're not entirely sure, as we have not heard of any kind of mobilizations or recruitment efforts happening in these oblasts yet. And so until we hear that, I would have to say that was probably not the goal of declaring martial law. Declaring martial law was probably done to crack down on partisan activity occurring behind the lines. And so with that, I hope that answers that question fairly well. Take it with a grain of salt, though, because it may not be considering everything. And with that, we are on to the final question of the night. And so who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And Melissa Harden's question is going to round off the stream tonight. And it says, do you think that when Ukraine gets adequate air defenses and Putin can no longer bomb the cities with impunity, that he will continue antics to test NATO like he's been doing?
I believe he will. That's something that's going to almost be a definite certainty even after this war is over. Even before this war, Russia is constantly testing NATO to see how far they can go. And so I think that he will continue to do that even if Ukraine does get proper air defenses. And so with that, I hope I was able to answer your question fairly well. And of course, thank you so much, Ivan Diablo, for the $2 super chat. That helps us out a decent bit and helps us keep this channel running. And so with that, we have reached the end of tonight's stream, a 3-hour and 25-minute long stream. It's been an absolute pleasure covering this news with each and every one of y'all. Of course, if you did enjoy, please make sure to subscribe, as these streams run every single day of the week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, except for Mondays. We take that day off, but every other day of the week at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, this stream is running, covering the past 24 hours of the war in Ukraine. I thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been a pleasure covering the news, and I will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of the war in Ukraine on day 241. Thank you all once again. Have a great night. Take care, and Slava Ukraini. And also thank you once again for the $5 super chat, Ivan Diablo. And good night.